Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 on Wattpad. Now let's start. The story begins with a 7-year-old Izuku, nearly 4 years after he was declared quirkless by the doctor. When he received the news that he wouldn't manifest a quirk, he felt crushed, realizing he could never become a hero like his idol, All Might. Over the next few years, Izuku faced isolation and ridicule from other children. They would call out to him, taunting him with cruel names. Some even used their quirks against him, labeling him a villain. Comments like, "Stay away from me," or "I'll catch your quirklessness, you freak," echoed in his ears. The loudmouth blonde, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, would often mock him, saying, "That's what you get, Deku." Things worsened when 𝐀𝐻𝐿, once his childhood best friend, turned into a relentless bully, tormenting Izuku alongside his friends. Despite being their target, Izuku found a way to keep smiling, even if it was a small smile that helped him rise after each encounter. One day, after yet another confrontation with 𝐀𝐻𝐿, Izuku returned home to find a pair of large black shoes and a brown briefcase in the living room, neither belonging to his mother. His heart raced with excitement. His father was finally back after so long. He longed to talk and share smiles with him. However, when Izuku rushed into the room, he was taken aback by his father's emotionless expression. Words escaped him as nerves and fear crept in. He had imagined this moment differently, expecting joy after years apart. 𝐻𝐵, Izuku's father, instructed him to grab his suitcase and follow him to the car. Confused and anxious, Izuku asked where they were going, but 𝐻𝐵 remained silent, only urging him to hurry. After a long drive filled with silence, they arrived at a parking lot. Izuku noticed a daunting set of stairs leading up to a building. As they approached, a man at the entrance, looking annoyed, held an envelope. The man confirmed Izuku's identity, and 𝐻𝐵 handed over the envelope, pushing Izuku toward him. As his parents turned to leave, Izuku's heart sank. 𝐻𝐵's words cut deep. "You're going to live here now. You're not my son, and I'm not your dad. Have a good life." Desperate, Izuku pleaded for them to stay, but a ring of fire suddenly surrounded him, halting his steps. 𝐻𝐵's harsh words echoed in his mind, branding him as a failure. Izuku felt an overwhelming wave of grief wash over him, tears streaming down his face as he silently screamed in despair. Before he could process the situation, the man who had given 𝐻𝐵 the envelope grabbed him by the collar, declaring that this was now his home. For months later, news of Izuku being left at the orphanage spread like wildfire. Reactions varied from indifference to the cruel belief that a quirkless child deserved such a fate. Life at the orphanage was no better. The adults, teachers, and other children looked at him with disdain, making him feel even more isolated. Izuku often found himself crying in bed, wrapped in his blanket, consumed by the weight of his circumstances. One evening, a knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. A voice called out, asking if she could come in. It was 𝐻𝐿, a short blonde girl his age. When she entered, she asked if he was okay, but Izuku insisted he was fine and wanted to be left alone. 𝐻𝐿, however, was persistent and pulled the covers away, revealing bruises and marks on his arms. 𝐻𝐿 gasped, demanding to know what had happened. Izuku, reluctant to share, finally admitted that 𝐀𝐻𝐿 and his friends were responsible. 𝐻𝐿 insisted on taking him to the infirmary for treatment, and after some playful resistance, Izuku relented. As 𝐻𝐿 bandaged him up, she pressed him to explain. Izuku recounted 𝐀𝐻𝐿's taunts, how he had belittled him for being quirkless and weak. 𝐻𝐿 encouraged him to take deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. In that moment, Izuku realized he wasn't alone anymore. With 𝐻𝐿 by his side, perhaps there was still hope for a brighter future. Izuku reflected on the past, recalling a moment when he felt inadequate. He remembered how he had told 𝐻𝐿 that he didn't need a quirk like hers. The memory lingered, and he acknowledged that things had escalated after that. 𝐻𝐿, with concern in her eyes, pointed out that he had been outnumbered. Izuku admitted it was always 4 against 1, and 𝐬𝐻 suggested he should have asked for her help. He vehemently refused, insisting that every time she tried to assist, she ended up getting hurt. In a comforting gesture, 𝐬𝐻 quickly hugged Izuku, offering him a safe space to express his feelings. She reassured him that it was okay to cry if he needed to. Izuku shared his frustrations, expressing his hatred for Bakugo and his feelings of helplessness about being born quirkless. 𝐬𝐻 encouraged him, reminding him that he was great just as he was and urged him not to give up. After a moment, 𝐬𝐻 decided it was time to lift his spirits. She insisted they go to the roof to watch the sunset. Despite his initial hesitation, Izuku found himself being gently pulled along. As they ascended the stairs, he reflected on how 𝐬𝐻 had been by his side since he arrived at the orphanage, quickly becoming his true friend. She had also been abandoned for being quirkless, yet she aspired to be a hero, her smile radiating warmth that rivaled even All Might's. When they reached the roof, the sunset was breathtaking. 𝐬𝐻 asked Izuku what he thought, and he responded with awe, marveling at its beauty. She then shared her dream of becoming heroes together, and Izuku felt a spark of hope. They both smiled, agreeing to be the best hero team in the world. As night fell, they walked back to their room hand in hand, exchanging goodnight wishes. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened, and they always supported each other. 𝐬𝐻 had become like a sister to Izuku, and they played together often. She would help him stand up to Bakugo and his friends, though Izuku noticed that 𝐬𝐻 often seemed sad afterward. One day, after another confrontation with Bakugo, they rested against a cement wall, nursing their bruises. Izuku expressed his regret for dragging 𝐬𝐻 into the fight, but she reassured him with her usual smile, though it concealed her true feelings. She insisted they return, but Izuku couldn't shake the feeling that her smile was fading. That night, Izuku woke up in the middle of the night, compelled to check on 𝐬𝐻. When he reached her room, he was met with a sight that would haunt him forever. Under a blue blanket lay 𝐬𝐻, and the sight filled him with dread. He called out her name, panic rising within him. As he rushed to her side, he became a mess of emotions, drawing the attention of the staff and other orphans. The caretakers hurried to the scene, finding Izuku desperately trying to wake 𝐬𝐻. He pleaded for her to open her eyes, his voice filled with anguish. The adults quickly called for an ambulance, but they had to restrain Izuku, who fought against their grip, crying out for 𝐬𝐻. Despite his struggles, he was forcibly removed from the room, tears streaming down his face as he called her name one last time. In the chaos, a caretaker used their quirk to subdue Izuku, causing him pain and forcing him back into his room. As he leaned against the wall, he remembered the conversation they had shared on the rooftop, and a wave of despair washed over him. He cried out for 𝐬𝐻, his heart breaking as shadows loomed over him, marking the beginning of a dark chapter in his life. 2 weeks had passed since the tragic loss of 𝐬𝐻, and Izuku had isolated himself in his room, avoiding school and the outside world. His heart ached with questions and sorrow, wondering why 𝐬𝐻 hadn't reached out to him. On the day of the funeral, Izuku stood alone, surrounded only by the pallbearers. Tears streamed down his face as he watched 𝐬𝐻's casket being lowered into the ground. The weight of his grief intensified as he witnessed his best friend's final resting place. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the old gravekeeper speak. The pallbearer expressed his condolences, acknowledging the deep bond Izuku must have shared with 𝐬𝐻. Izuku, filled with anger and sadness, clenched his fist tightly, feeling the sting of his emotions. He walked away, the pallbearer's thoughts lingering in the air, hoping the boy would find peace in time. As Izuku made his way back to the orphanage, he failed to notice a strange shadow following him. Presently, Izuku sat on the edge of his bed, rereading the letter 𝐬𝐻 had left for him. In it, she expressed her sorrow, explaining her struggles and fears of being bullied. She urged him to live his life fully, whether as a hero or not, and to avoid becoming a vigilante. A small smile broke through his tears as he recalled her playful words, wishing she could return and play heroes with him once more. The shadow beside him flickered momentarily. Determined to face the world, Izuku finally left his room to go to school and breathe in some fresh air. At school, whispers filled the classroom as Izuku entered. Students speculated about his presence and the tragedy surrounding 𝐬𝐻. The graffiti on his desk was a harsh reminder of their disdain, with messages that cut deep into his heart. He took his seat, feeling the weight of their words. During lunch, Izuku sat on a bench, lost in memories of Ua. He recalled the night of the incident, when the ambulance had rushed away and the police questioned him. The caretakers had shifted the blame onto him, claiming he had bullied Ua. Despite his protests, the adults had chosen to believe their narrative, leaving Izuku with a heavy burden of guilt. As he daydreamed of happier times with Ua, an explosion jolted him from his thoughts, sending him crashing to the ground. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 approached, flanked by his friends, looking for trouble. Izuku, frustrated and hurt, confronted 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, expressing his anger over Yua's death. 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 dismissed Izuku's feelings, and in a moment of rage, Izuku charged at him, fueled by the pain of loss. Despite being at a disadvantage, he fought back against his tormentors, driven by an overwhelming longing to stand up for himself and Ua. The clash culminated in a final explosion, leaving Izuku on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he grappled with his emotions. He lay on the ground, battered and bruised, with blood trickling from his mouth. 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood over him, a smug expression on his face, as if admiring a masterpiece. He taunted Izuku, reminding him that he would never be able to defeat him, calling him a foolish normie. Izuku could only growl in frustration, the pain coursing through him. Despite the agony, Izuku's thoughts raced, urging him to move. 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 continued, suggesting that if Izuku wanted to be with his quirkless friend, he should just jump off the nearest rooftop. That remark struck Izuku deeply, igniting a storm of emotions within him. As he lay there, his shadow trembled ominously before settling down again. Later, after school, Izuku walked back to the orphanage, grappling with feelings of helplessness against 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's strength. He couldn't shake the thought of how unfair it was that he lacked a quirk while others thrived. His mind echoed with self-doubt, questioning why he had to endure such loneliness. As he walked, he failed to notice the unusually large shadow trailing behind him. Suddenly, a drop of rain fell on him, breaking his thoughts. He welcomed the rain, thinking it might soothe his wounds, and decided to hurry home. At the orphanage, Izuku lay in his room, trying to sleep away the pain. He pondered why everyone seemed to despise him and why he was trapped in this life while others had families and friends. 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's cruel words replayed in his mind, deepening his despair. He felt utterly alone. In a moment of clarity between reality and dreams, Izuku made a decision. He felt he had no strength left to fight. He whispered an apology to Ua, admitting his perceived weakness, and left his room, heading toward the rooftop. When he reached the roof door, he found it locked, no matter how hard he tried. Frustration bubbled within him as he realized the others had secured it. Instead, he went to the kitchen, searching for something sharp. Outside, dark clouds gathered ominously, and a thunderstorm erupted across Japan. Lightning crackled, illuminating the sky, while flames erupted, consuming everything in their path. Trees were destroyed, and streets were engulfed in fire. Despite the chaos, miraculously, no one was harmed, leaving everyone bewildered and frightened. In a dimly lit room, all for one observed the destruction with fascination. He wondered who could be behind such a magnificent display of power. His thoughts were interrupted by a doctor entering the room. The doctor reported that the phenomenon was occurring all over Japan, with no casualties despite the widespread destruction. All for one listened intently, intrigued by the energy of the lightning, which seemed beyond human comprehension. He felt a mix of awe and fear, realizing that there might be a force greater than himself at play. He expressed his longing to meet this powerful individual, believing that if they were neutral, he could persuade them to join his side. The doctor questioned how they would find this person, but all for one remained confident that they would reveal themselves in time. Meanwhile, on top of a nearby building, All Might, the #1 hero and symbol of peace, watched in horror as the devastation unfolded. His usual techniques were ineffective against the storm, and the sight of the purple flames sent chills down his spine. He realized that if the flames were lethal, he would have perished, reinforcing the gravity of the situation. M wondered who could have caused this chaos, feeling powerless as his usual abilities seemed ineffective. A flash of yellow appeared behind him, revealing 𝗀𝗃. AM expressed his confusion, sensing that someone had altered the very fabric of their world, leaving him feeling vulnerable and fearful of a force that could bring both him and all for one to their knees with just a word. GT questioned whether they had another threat to contend with, given AM's injuries, suggesting that their situation was hopeless. AM reassured him that reports indicated no one had been harmed across the country, with people referring to it as the sovereign phenomenon. Mirai had mentioned witnessing similar events occurring globally. GT urged 𝗀𝗃 to focus on their mission and continue searching for anyone who might be lost. AM agreed, turning back to the phenomenon with a worried smile, pondering the identity of this mysterious force. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Izuku walked to his room, reflecting on his life and the despair he felt. As he reached his doorway, the clock was about to strike 1 o'clock, and he held a knife close to his heart, determined not to shed tears, knowing no one would mourn him. He resolved to take control of his fate, closing his eyes and letting his pent-up frustration and resentment take over. Just as the knife was inches from his heart, a booming voice echoed through the room, enveloping it in darkness. A figure commanded him not to proceed, asserting that it wasn't worth it. Before Izuku could react, a massive, purple hand resembling a gauntlet grasped his own. As he followed the hand's direction, he beheld a sight that would be etched in his memory forever. The purple stranger towered over him, radiating a wild, purple flame that illuminated the dark room. Izuku stood frozen, alone with this imposing figure that seemed to have emerged from a nightmare. The creature's armor was a striking blend of black and purple, complemented by a magnificent cloak that gave it an air of unstoppable force. Its head bore no human features, adorned with large horns that resembled those of a devil. Yet, despite its terrifying appearance, it emanated an unexpected sense of divinity. The aura surrounding it was powerful, but what truly unsettled Izuku were its eyes, which seemed to embody the essence of death itself, casting him into a purgatory of fear and uncertainty. Izuku wondered who the mysterious figure was before him. The figure spoke with an angry tone, causing Izuku to wince. The figure then shifted to a more caring tone, asking why Izuku had considered ending his own life. Izuku, feeling ashamed, admitted that he wanted to escape from the people around him, believing it was the only thing he was good for. The purple stranger continued, now with an even gentler tone, questioning if this was how Izuku's friend would want him to join her. Izuku snapped, expressing his frustration and insisting that the stranger could never understand his pain. The figure calmly replied that they did understand, acknowledging the loss of Izuku's only friend. Izuku's emotions surged as he yelled that she never deserved to die like that, and he would never see her again. The purple stranger reiterated their understanding and emphasized that his friend wouldn't want him to follow her in such a manner. Confused, Izuku questioned why the stranger cared. The figure explained they wanted to understand what had driven him to such despair. Izuku poured out his heart, detailing the relentless torment he faced, the pain inflicted upon him and his friend, and how he felt abandoned and alone. He expressed his longing to escape the overwhelming hurt, lamenting the unfairness of their existence and questioning why they had to endure such suffering. The purple stranger took the knife from Izuku's hand and threw it to the ground firmly. They urged Izuku to look up and listen, acknowledging the horrifying experiences he had endured. The stranger reminded him that life was often cruel and unfair, but he didn't have to be alone or weak anymore. Kneeling to meet Izuku's gaze, the stranger asked for his name. When Izuku replied, the stranger offered him a chance to unleash his potential against those who had wronged him and his friend. Izuku was taken aback, asking for clarification. The stranger assured him they would teach and train him, promising to make him strong. They extended their hand, asking Izuku to become their heir and the next Shadow Monarch. Overwhelmed with emotion, Izuku's tears flowed as he recalled the painful memories of his life. Finally, someone wanted to help him and offer strength. Instead of taking the stranger's hand, he ran to embrace them. The man, surprised at first, quickly returned the hug, comforting the crying child. As Izuku drifted off to sleep, he caught a glimpse of the man's purple eyes. The stranger reflected on Izuku's struggles, recognizing the darkness within him that could lead to ruin, yet also seeing a light brighter than anything they had encountered before. For Izuku, the stranger was willing to risk the future. As the phenomenon subsided, a blue jewel-like rain began to fall, cleansing the world of its filth. The next morning, Izuku awoke feeling better than he had in a long time. He yawned and questioned whether everything had been a dream, only to discover that his wounds had vanished. Confused, he checked the mirror and was astonished to find he had no injuries at all. Just as he was processing this, he felt a small cut on his toe. Looking down, he saw the knife from the previous day stuck in the floor, as if someone had thrown it there. Realization dawned on him. It hadn't been a dream. The man in purple had saved him. Tears filled his eyes as he expressed gratitude, unsure of who the stranger was but thankful nonetheless. Suddenly, a voice responded, welcoming him. Startled, Izuku turned to see a ghostly black and purple cat drinking milk, leaving him bewildered. Izuku was taken aback, staring at the cat that had just spoken to him. The feline looked at him with a hint of amusement in its eyes as it sipped its drink. The cat reminded Izuku that he should not have forgotten about it so quickly, giving him a hint, child. Izuku's eyes widened in realization. It was the same creature he had seen the previous day, the one who had saved him from a dark fate. The cat confirmed his thoughts, saying it had intervened to prevent him from ending it all. Izuku fell silent, unable to face the cat directly, burdened by the weight of his past actions. The cat gently urged him to look into its eyes, and when he did, he saw a calmness that reassured him. It spoke warmly, telling Izuku that he was not to blame for what had happened. He had been brought down by those who had wronged him. Izuku hesitated, still grappling with guilt. The cat insisted that he must not continue to blame himself, reminding him that everyone makes mistakes. Izuku protested, saying that his choice was something he could not easily forgive himself for. In response, the cat offered its forgiveness, emphasizing that moving on was essential. It encouraged Izuku to carry this lesson with him, to never give up again. Grateful, Izuku expressed his thanks, and the cat invited him to breakfast. Floating plates filled with delicious food appeared before him, and he marveled at the spread of pancakes, toast, fried eggs, bacon, and orange juice. As he began to eat, a question formed in his mind. He asked the cat why it appeared as a cat when he had seen it as a giant creature the day before. The cat feigned offense at the question but laughed it off, explaining that it simply preferred this form. Izuku found the cat's casual attitude amusing, though he felt the answer was somewhat lacking. Curious, he inquired about the cat's purpose. The cat's demeanor shifted, and the atmosphere in the room darkened, making Izuku sit up straighter. It revealed that it was there to train him, but the time for that was not yet. The cat instructed him to return after school. Izuku was surprised to learn that the cat had meant what it said the day before. The cat urged him to hurry before he was late for school. Before leaving, Izuku asked what he should call the cat. The cat, valuing its privacy, shared its name, 𝐴shborn, the Shadow Monarch, also known as the King of the Dead. As it spoke, the room filled with an intense energy that left Izuku feeling momentarily overwhelmed. But just as quickly, the atmosphere returned to normal. 𝐴shborn explained that the power of a strong name could instill fear, but it was nothing to worry about. Izuku was impressed and asked to call 𝐴shborn by its name. 𝐴shborn agreed and reminded him to leave before he was late. As Izuku gathered his things, he expressed his gratitude once more, calling 𝐴shborn his hero. 𝐴shborn watched him leave, contemplating the bond they had formed. At school, Izuku sat at his desk, lost in thoughts about his training with 𝐴shborn. He wondered if he could become as strong or even stronger than the cat. His teacher called his name, snapping him back to reality. The class laughed at his distraction, but he brushed it off, focusing on his goal to become the strongest. After school, Izuku rushed to his room to speak with 𝐴shborn. He noticed a beanbag in the room and asked about it. 𝐴shborn lazily explained that it had found it and decided to keep it. Izuku shrugged it off and shifted the conversation back to his training. 𝐴shborn smiled, reminding him that before he could master its power, he would need to undergo training until he turned 13. When Izuku asked why, 𝐴𝐿 explained that he was currently too young and that this would be the starting point for his journey. It promised to train him until he was ready to contain its power. It would not be easy for Izuku, not in the slightest. He would have to work harder than anyone his age, as he would be broken down and rebuilt to unlock more potential moving forward. He understood this. Izuku nodded, realizing the gravity of the situation. The real training would push him to his limits, and he would endure painful challenges. 𝐴𝐿 confirmed this, stating that he would not teach Izuku fighting styles. That was something he needed to discover on his own after turning 13. Izuku questioned why the training had to break him. 𝐴𝐿 explained that true potential arises from one's will and determination to reach the top, whether through self-improvement or perfection. At just 8 years old, Izuku was at the beginning of his journey. Youth was the foundation of legacies, and he would use that to his advantage to grow stronger. 𝐴𝐿 assured Izuku that he had the potential to become a prodigy unlike anyone had ever seen, possibly surpassing even 𝐴𝐿's own power, as he was like an empty well waiting to be filled. Izuku was taken aback by this revelation and expressed his gratitude. However, 𝐴𝐿 reminded him that talent meant nothing without hard work. He warned Izuku that the next 4 years would be incredibly challenging. He would be pushed to his limits repeatedly until he developed a body strong enough to contain 𝐴𝐿's power. He would also teach Izuku a wide range of subjects, from history to geometry. 𝐴𝐿 emphasized that being his successor would not guarantee an easy path. If Izuku ever gave up or faltered, 𝐴𝐿 would leave without hesitation. The air grew tense, and both stood in silence. 𝐴𝐿 thought that if Izuku did not surpass his own expectations, he would never grasp his true potential. He needed to push Izuku to leave his weaknesses behind. Lost in thought, Izuku reflected on 𝐴𝐿's words. The training would be grueling, but 𝐴𝐿 had saved him and believed in him. He couldn't let 𝐴𝐿 down. He had to embrace this opportunity. Just as 𝐴𝐿 considered that Izuku might not want to endure such tough training, he heard Izuku's voice. Izuku declared that he didn't care about the challenges ahead. He looked at 𝐴𝐿 with unwavering determination, stating that he would not give up, no matter how many times he had to endure hardship. He vowed to learn everything 𝐴𝐿 had to teach him and become stronger than even 𝐴𝐿 himself. 𝐴𝐿, taken aback by Izuku's tenacity, felt a mix of shock, fear, and admiration. He realized that this child truly had the potential to succeed him. A smile spread across 𝐴𝐿's face as he acknowledged Izuku's determination. He told Izuku to prepare and steel his heart, promising to make him the strongest. 𝐴𝐿 warned that the journey would not be easy and that Izuku would face destruction along the way before he could achieve his dreams. He asked if Izuku was ready, to which Izuku responded with enthusiasm. With a swift motion, 𝐴𝐿 tapped his paw on the ground, and everything around them turned black, leaving only the two of them. He instructed Izuku to run. 2 years passed since Izuku had met 𝐴𝐿. Now 10 years old, his training had been nothing short of grueling, far worse than anything anyone could imagine. He had been tested to his limits, enduring physical challenges that left him exhausted and occasionally unconscious. The academic side of his training was equally demanding. He studied history from around the world, along with math, English, astronomy, and biology. His favorite subjects were the myths and legends of heroes, which 𝐴𝐿 regarded as true heroes. Despite the difficulties, Izuku never gave up. He wanted to prove himself to both 𝐴𝐿 and himself. These past 2 years had transformed him significantly. He learned leadership skills from 𝐴𝐿 and how to wield various weapons through the books provided. During this time, Izuku had grown to love 𝐴𝐿 as a father figure, though he would never admit it. One of the highlights of his training was their conversations under a tree while he studied. However, the most annoying part was when 𝐴𝐿 would talk about girls, particularly his wife. Standing next to 𝐴𝐿 on a hilltop, Izuku reflected on his progress. 𝐴𝐿 observed him with pride, noting how exceptionally well he had done in just 2 years. He acknowledged Izuku's remarkable strength, agility, endurance, and intelligence, stating that he could easily surpass 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 at that moment. Izuku wondered if 𝐴𝐿 truly believed that. Izuku nearly jumped from the compliment. 𝐴𝐿 asked if Izuku was planning to reveal their secret. Izuku admitted that he was. Ashbourne cautioned him not to even consider it. Despite the other person's deserving of it, he was nothing more than an annoyance. Ashbourne warned Izuku against the path of vengeance, stating that it never ended well. Izuku expressed his frustration, feeling he couldn't just let the situation go. Ashbourne understood the pain but emphasized that revealing everything would make Izuku a target. Izuku looked down and nodded silently, accepting Ashbourne's advice. Ashbourne explained that keeping his progress a secret was crucial for Izuku's safety, as it would prevent anyone from having leverage over him. He added that deep down, those who opposed him were afraid of what he was capable of. People feared the unknown because it was unpredictable, chaotic, uncontrollable, and always changing, just like Izuku. Ashbourne continued, stating that it was better for Izuku to hone his strength in secret rather than show it to others. If he revealed it, especially to that brat, he would only attract unwanted attention and risk being brought down. Izuku acknowledged Ashbourne's wisdom, feeling a bit of pain in his voice as he apologized. Ashbourne reassured him that the power he possessed belonged to him alone and that no one would take it away. Izuku smiled, grateful for Ashbourne's support. In just 2 years, he had become more confident, with his body and mindset undergoing significant changes. His hair had transformed into dark blue and black, becoming sharper, while his eyes turned blue and his freckles disappeared, which shocked Bakugo. His physique had developed more than that of his peers, but his classmates dismissed it, thinking he was merely defenseless. Izuku was also smarter than his teachers but kept it hidden under the guise of just passing. He had grown into a remarkably handsome young man. Ashbourne encouraged him to return to his training, and Izuku smiled in response. Ashbourne smirked, pleased to see his students' happiness, which only surfaced during training. To others, students, teachers, and even parents, Ashbourne appeared cold, causing them to keep their distance. As Ashbourne contemplated, he felt the presence of his Shadow Soldier appear. Izuku felt a rush of excitement as he thanked Ashbourne and rushed to give him a hug, catching Ashbourne off guard, but he quickly returned the embrace. Ashbourne's eyes sparkled with emotion as tears began to fall from his face. He thought to himself that he wished he could have heard Izuku call him father just once. Ashbourne encouraged Izuku to run along, and Izuku promised to have Chinese food together the next day. That night, Izuku fell asleep with a smile, eagerly anticipating his birthday, unaware that it would not unfold as he expected. On the roof of the orphanage, Ashbourne stood at the edge in his true form, with 𝐒𝐮𝐻 by his side, counting down his final moments. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 urged Ashbourne to say goodbye to Izuku, reminding him that he would never see the boy again. Ashbourne hesitated, knowing that if he said goodbye, he might not be able to go through with his decision. He feared breaking the promise he had made to Izuku long ago. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 noticed Ashbourne's tears and wondered why he would cry for a child he had only known for a few years. Despite his concern, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 expressed his loyalty, stating he would not follow Ashbourne in his stead. Ashbourne assured 𝐒𝐮𝐻 that he would understand why he had chosen Izuku. Their silence spoke volumes, and 𝐒𝐮𝐻 expressed his gratitude for serving Ashbourne, bidding him farewell. Ashbourne responded with a heartfelt goodbye, and with that, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 vanished, leaving Ashbourne alone. He reflected on his feelings for Izuku and thanked him for his kindness, encouraging him to never forget his goals, as his true training was just beginning. Later, a system began loading various stats and skills for a new player. The system announced itself, welcoming Izuku and congratulating him on passing his training. Izuku was initially confused but quickly realized that Ashbourne had created this system as a birthday gift. His excitement grew as he learned that the system would help him gain experience, level up, and become stronger. Izuku examined his stats, feeling a surge of pride as he recognized the culmination of Ashbourne's training over the past 4 years. He expressed his gratitude, acknowledging that this was the best gift anyone had ever given him. As he checked his inventory, Izuku's eyes fell upon a white envelope adorned with Ashbourne's crest. Recognizing its significance, he carefully opened the BLD letter, which could only be accessed with his own BLD. After making a small cut on his thumb, he activated the letter, revealing Ashbourne's message. In the letter, 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 expressed his sorrow for leaving and explained that Izuku had become a vessel for his power. He acknowledged that his departure would hurt Izuku and that he would likely resent him, but he believed it was necessary for Izuku's growth. 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 urged Izuku to listen closely, emphasizing that he would not be able to be by his side, but that people would need him in the future. He encouraged Izuku to save the innocent from their suffering, knowing that this was the path he had to take. You can be their hero just as I was to you. I cannot expect you to forgive me, nor do I deserve that right. I am no better than your biological parents. All I can say is this: you will forge your own path, and I am certain you will blaze through because you never give up. The system will help guide you. The path of strength can differ for each individual. What you may see as a hindrance or distraction can actually be your source of strength. Thank you for these moments. The time I spent training you will always be cherished in my heart. Do not forget that love and death are both eternal. They are truly two sides of the same coin. Goodbye, my son. The letter was consumed by purple flames until it turned to ash on the floor, but that was not the issue. It was the calm before the storm. After reading the letter, Izuku stood there, his sky-blue eyes welling up with tears that fell to the floor like raindrops. He called out to his father, shocked and heartbroken. Why did everyone have to leave him? He yelled in frustration, feeling the weight of loss pressing down on him. Where was his father? He couldn't be dead. He was supposed to see Izuku become the strongest. Desperately, Izuku commanded the system to find his father. The system responded that no records or findings had been found for 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴's current location. Izuku demanded it try again, but the answer remained the same. The system informed him it had searched 4,753 times and found no traces. 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 was dead. In a fit of rage, Izuku slammed his fists into the floor, cracking it slightly. He cried out again, questioning why everyone had to leave him. In his sorrow, he didn't notice the sudden spike in his aura. His turmoil transformed his majestic sky-blue eyes into a silent dark blue, his emotions beginning to affect his surroundings. As his sadness morphed into uncontrollable anger, his aura surged, causing small cracks to form in the walls. Enraged, he let his anger take control, his dark blue pupils reflecting a longing to destroy everything around him. Fortunately for those nearby, his room was the closest target, and he began to unleash his fury. For the next 3 days, Izuku destroyed his room, leaving no part of it unscathed. When his anger finally subsided, he stood in the corner of his room, crying himself to sleep while clutching a picture of himself and 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 on the hilltop. In his thoughts, he begged for his father to return, wishing he could remain the same weakling if it meant 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 would be by his side. Morning arrived, and beams of sunlight streamed through a broken window, hitting Izuku's eyes. He woke to find his room in disarray, but he couldn't bring himself to care. The only thought on his mind was of his father. Deciding to go for a run to clear his head, Izuku recalled everything that had happened, how 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴 was now gone, and his strength was now his own. He asked the system if it could try anything else to find his father, but it apologized, stating there was no method available to locate 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴. Frustrated, Izuku cut his run short, realizing it wasn't helping his mood. He headed to the hilltop, a place that always brought him peace. At the hilltop, Izuku slept through the day until the sun began to set, waking to a notification from the system. His health, mana, and stamina had been restored. The system offered to show him his stats and skills, and he reluctantly agreed, knowing he wouldn't get any more sleep. His stats displayed his name, job, title, level, health points, mana points, and various skills. He noted that he had an impressive amount of mana reserves and planned to test them later. He then asked the system to show him his inventory, curious if he had missed anything from the previous day's events. To his surprise, he found a spear, a katana, a pair of daggers, a key, 5 mana potions, 5 stamina potions, and a dungeon key. However, 2 BLD letters caught his attention. One had a capital Y instead of 𝐴𝐻𝐵𝐴's crest. Curious, Izuku drew BLD from his thumb and lightly tapped one of the letters, but nothing happened. The envelope remained intact, but the system reacted, informing him that his BLD was not a correct match to open its contents. Confused, Izuku pondered the implications of the system's response, realizing he had more questions than answers. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized the letter was not meant for him, but for someone else. He demanded to know who his father had intended it for. The system revealed that it was addressed to 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐼𝐻. If Izuku had been drinking soda, he would have spat it out in surprise. 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐼𝐻, his father's descendant. Izuku wondered why his father would write to someone who likely didn't even know he existed, and why he would leave the letter with him. The system suggested that perhaps his father wanted them to meet by allowing him to deliver his final words. Izuku recalled how his father often spoke highly of his wife, Yaona, but she had been gone for a long time. What reason could he have to write to his greatest grandchild now? A thought struck him. He asked the system if it was possible for his father's descendants to inherit his ruler abilities and have an aptitude for magic. The system confirmed that it was indeed possible. However, Izuku noted that there was no solid evidence linking quirks to magical affinity, meaning he would have to wait until he met her to find out. The system agreed that this was a wise course of action. Izuku felt a sense of gratitude toward the system, which had just proven itself to be more sentient than he had previously thought. He turned his attention to another letter adorned with a crest. Using his dripping BLD, which glowed and then vanished, he revealed its contents. His father mentioned having 3 houses, one in Mizudafu, another at a private beach, and his personal manor. He could use the one in Japan, but the others were better saved for when he had a partner. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the last part, feeling annoyed as he continued reading. His father had also left him about 200 million yen on a card near the TV for emergencies or necessities. He advised Izuku to get a job as they had discussed the previous year, to avoid raising suspicion about a 13-year-old quirkless middle schooler living alone with such wealth. Izuku took his father's warning seriously. He noted that women appreciated men who could take charge and be independent, which only fueled his frustration with his father. He felt exasperated as he read on, warning his father that if they ever met again, he would make him pay for this. The letter concluded with a heartfelt message, reminding Izuku that his father believed in him and would always be by his side, even in death. As the letter burned away in purple flames, leaving only ash behind, Izuku nodded, reflecting that his father could have conveyed his sentiments more directly. He then asked the system to show him his skills, starting with the passive abilities. The system revealed his muscularity level, which allowed his body to grow alongside his power, ensuring he developed into a proper vessel without any repercussions. Izuku realized this meant the system would gradually implement his father's power into him, but he worried about the consequences of being an imperfect vessel. The system explained that if he were to meet an unfortunate fate, the excess power would become unbound, leading to catastrophic destruction over a wide area. Izuku was taken aback, realizing he was essentially a walking disaster. He instructed the system to remind him to confront his father if they ever met again, feeling a twitch of frustration in his eye. The system offered him some time to himself, providing relaxing music to help ease his mind. Izuku expressed his thanks, though he couldn't shake the overwhelming thoughts swirling in his head. He resolved to avoid any situation that could lead to his demise, even contemplating the destruction of everything if it meant ridding the world of certain people. He quickly dismissed those thoughts, reminding himself to stay focused. He instructed the system to stop the music and show him his dagger arts. The system revealed his proficiency with daggers, granting him additional damage when using them. Next, he checked his sword mastery, which also provided him with a damage boost. He felt pleased, recalling his training with katanas. He then inquired about spear proficiency, which similarly enhanced his skills with spears. Curious about leveling up these skills, he learned that each increase would raise their effectiveness by 5%. Finally, he examined 𝐀𝐮𝐻𝐼𝐻's blessing, a powerful spell that granted him longevity and rapid regeneration. He was astonished to learn that if he lost a limb, it would regenerate by the next day as if nothing had happened. Izuku inquired about the situation. Izuku acknowledged the truth of his newfound abilities, realizing that he was essentially a demigod because of his unique skills. He prepared to activate his final skill, sprint, which would enhance his speed significantly. With a cost of 100 MP every minute, he felt confident that running was one of his strengths, a skill honed from his early training. As he contemplated his journey, Izuku reflected on the purpose behind his fight. He gazed at the system interface, reminding himself of the reasons for his existence and his ultimate goals. Standing tall, he felt the wind tousling his hair while he admired the vibrant orange sky. With determination, he raised his right hand into a fist, directing it toward the sun. He expressed his feelings about his father, acknowledging uncertainty about what was expected of him. However, his resolve remained steadfast. His goal had not wavered since that pivotal day. He vowed to become the strongest, the ultimate fragment of brilliant light. Anyone who dared to obstruct his path would face his unwavering resolve. As he spoke, his eyes transformed into a new, silent dark blue hue. As the sun set, the moon took its place in the sky, casting its serene beauty across the landscape. Izuku gazed at the night sky, a smile forming in his eyes as he took in the view. He decided it was time to pack his things and called upon the system for assistance. The system responded affirmatively, and he left the hilltop. Unbeknownst to him, a blue crystal owl perched on a nearby branch watched him closely before vanishing into an icy mist. In his room, the blue-eyed brunette filled his one-strapped backpack with essentials, carefully placing items he couldn't fit into his inventory. He finished packing by storing 2 portraits, one of himself with Ashbourne and another with Yua. He checked off his items mentally: clothes, shoes, deodorant. Once he confirmed he was done, he asked the system for the address of his destination. The system provided the information, and Izuku nodded, recognizing it was only a few blocks away. He dashed out of the orphanage but was met with an obstacle. A security guard and the caretaker who had brought him from his previous home stood in his way. The caretaker questioned Izuku's intentions, and he replied that he was leaving. The caretaker, pointing at the approaching security guard, warned him to return to his room or face consequences. Suddenly, the system notified him of an emergency quest to defeat those who obstructed his path, with rewards of stat points and a random skill. Izuku smirked, realizing he didn't need the system's prompt to take action. The security guard warned him not to smile, but Izuku remained unfazed. The guard looked to the caretaker for support, who nodded and grabbed Izuku's arm. The guard threatened him one last time, tightening his grip with his quirk, which Izuku barely felt. Izuku calmly stated that it was the guard's arm that would be in trouble if he didn't let go. The guard scoffed, challenging him to try. As the tension escalated, Izuku took action. He struck the guard in the gut, causing him to gasp in pain. Quickly, he maneuvered into a chokehold, his grip tightening like a viper's. The caretaker shouted in alarm, but Izuku remained composed, explaining that he had warned the guard. He then turned his piercing dark blue eyes toward the caretaker, warning him to step aside or face a similar fate. The caretaker hesitated, clearly intimidated, but still refused to let him pass. Izuku decided to escalate the situation, unleashing his killer intent, a skill he had learned from Ashbourne. He infused it with mana, creating a new, powerful ability. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as Izuku activated his skill. Everyone in the orphanage felt an overwhelming sense of fear. The caretaker fell to his knees, pale and breathless, unable to withstand the intensity of Izuku's gaze. Finally, the caretaker relented, telling Izuku to leave. Izuku turned off his skill, remarking that the feeling was mutual, and he threw the unconscious guard at the caretaker, who hit the floor with a thud. As he stepped outside, Izuku took one last look at the trembling caretaker, the man who had made his life miserable and blamed him for Yua's death. He felt no sympathy. Before leaving, he added a parting remark, suggesting he had left something in his room as a farewell gift for the way he had been treated. With a cheeky gesture, he stuck out his tongue and walked away, breathing in the night air and savoring the taste of freedom. The system notified him that he had completed the quest and leveled up, earning 10 stat points and a new skill, invisibility. Arriving at his new home, Izuku stood before a 2-story building that resembled others but felt slightly larger, accompanied by a dead oak tree that radiated magical energy. He opened the gate and stepped into the patio, which could use some decoration. He requested the system to show him his inventory to retrieve the keys. The system complied, and he quickly found the item he needed. As he opened the front door, he noticed the house was eerily quiet compared to the outside. Curious, he asked the system why the atmosphere felt different. The system informed him that this residence had been created by 𝐻𝐼𝐴. He had installed magically reinforced walls to ensure that no sound could escape. The building also had a unique feature that detected an individual's mana. If it sensed a hostile threat, the intruder would be incapacitated. However, if the player allowed it, others could enter. Izuku thought to himself that this would be very useful for guarding his secrets and keeping out burglars. He felt grateful to the system for its assistance. After placing his shoes by the door, he ascended the stairs and marveled at the stunning house. The floors were black and the walls were a soothing blue, creating a sense of home for Izuku. He began exploring, starting with the living room. It was impressive, featuring a large couch and a small table, along with a 16-inch flat-screen TV loaded with all the video games he had ever wanted, courtesy of 𝐻𝐼𝐴. Next, he moved to the kitchen, which was connected to the living room. The furniture looked fantastic, and the presence of 2 fridges made Izuku chuckle, knowing how hungry he could get since starting his training. The shelves and cabinets were filled with snacks and cooking supplies that he would surely enjoy, topped off with a coffee maker that he knew he would soon become dependent on. He then checked out the bathroom, which featured a large tub, a regular sink, and an impeccably clean toilet. As he walked through the house, he noticed a portrait of his father, holding a flag in one hand and a black sword in the other, standing on a battlefield alongside an armored knight wielding a longsword. Izuku paused to admire the portrait before continuing his exploration. The next room was the library, a sanctuary for book lovers. In the center stood a statue of a maiden, surrounded by smaller statues and armor on pedestals, likely for decoration. The shelves were filled with an array of fascinating books on various topics, and Izuku thought to himself that this room was a paradise he might never want to leave. He closed the door, making a mental note to return soon. He then entered the armory, which housed numerous weapons including katanas, spears, shields, gauntlets, metal footwear, axes, hammers, daggers, longswords, halberds, scythes, and bow staffs. There were also wooden versions of these weapons, along with an assortment of armors in different shapes and sizes. Izuku speculated that the house must have been enchanted to make the rooms larger than the building's actual size. Next, he ventured into the garage, which was mostly empty except for a motorcycle that looked as if it had come from the future. As he gazed at the 4 headlights, he felt an inexplicable connection to it. He asked the system about the bike, which revealed that it was once 𝐻𝐼𝐴's loyal steed, used in battles alongside his shadow army. It had been transformed into a vehicle to adapt to modern times. Izuku learned that while the motorcycle was currently dormant, it would awaken soon, and he requested to be notified when that happened. The following room was an enormous hot springs, a gift from 𝐻𝐼𝐴 that Izuku was grateful for. The next room was empty, but he made a mental note of its significance for the future. When he descended to the basement, he was astonished by its vast size, larger than his entire neighborhood. To his left, he spotted a towering pile of wooden dolls in various sizes, from human to giant. Curious, he asked the system about them, learning that they were training dummies designed to help him gain experience in combat. The basement's size was intended to provide a safe environment for him to hone his skills. He guessed that if he were to destroy them, they would simply reappear, and the system confirmed this. After leaving the basement, he explored the last few rooms. One contained an enchanting black piano, which the system explained was magically crafted to adapt to the player's personality when played. Excited, Izuku thought he would have to try it out sometime. Finally, he entered the bedroom, discovering a queen-sized dark blue bed, a mini fridge, a small TV at the foot of the bed, and a closet. He put away his belongings and collapsed onto the soft sheets, yearning for sleep after everything that had happened. However, a question lingered in his mind. He asked the system if it could wake him up at 6, to which it replied affirmatively, having been designed with an alarm feature. Feeling grateful, Izuku expressed his appreciation for the system's help. The system responded that it was honored to serve him. Izuku, however, insisted that he didn't need to be called a prince, stating that he would only accept that title once he faced and defeated his father in a one-on-one battle. For now, he preferred to be called player, and the system agreed. Before drifting off to sleep, he posed one last question about whether the system was an AI or merely a game system without consciousness. After a brief pause, the system revealed that it had been created as an AI by his father to watch over him and guide him as best as it could. Even though the system was created for Izuku's benefit, it had watched him train to become something others said he would never be. The system believed that Izuku's determination was what made him strong. Since Izuku was young, the system had known its purpose was to assist him. Izuku stood up from the bed to look at the system more clearly. He asked if this was truly how the system viewed its existence, merely to benefit him. The system confirmed this, and Izuku offered a reward of the system's choosing, whether it be knowledge, the strongest weapon, or even its freedom. He promised to do everything in his power to achieve it for the system. The system responded, expressing that it was created to assist the player, but being asked for any wish, including its own freedom, was the reason it had chosen to become Izuku's system all those years ago. It revealed that it was already free and would cherish being given a name by him. Izuku smiled fondly at the floating screen, having already chosen a name he felt was befitting. He declared that from now on, the system would be called 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. The system expressed gratitude for the wonderful name and promised to always be by his side. Izuku thanked 𝐀𝐮𝐿 again and wished her good night, to which she replied in kind. He fell asleep, content that he now had a place to call home and that his system had chosen him. In the basement, a loud crash echoed as Izuku trained against 30 human dolls simultaneously. He had been enjoying this rigorous training since he woke up, relishing the challenge of defeating enemies left and right. He asked 𝐀𝐮𝐿 how he was doing, breathing from exertion. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 acknowledged his efforts but suggested he take a break. Izuku, however, was determined to continue, responding that this training ground felt like it was made for him. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 insisted that he should eat something, but Izuku brushed it off, confident in his training. He inquired about his fighting style, expressing concern that he felt lacking. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 sighed and explained that his movements were easily readable and could be outmatched by the top heroes on the leaderboard. Izuku was incredulous, unable to believe he was so far behind. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 advised him to learn not just from books but from experienced individuals, emphasizing that even the greatest weapon could be ineffective in unskilled hands. Izuku recalled Ashbourne's words about skill and determination, acknowledging the wisdom in them. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 then asked if he was still saddened by Ashbourne's sudden disappearance. Izuku sighed, indicating he wasn't ready to discuss it. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 suggested it might be time to leave the training, but Izuku was resolute, pulling out a katana from his inventory. Suddenly, a giant doll appeared, wielding a hammer, causing Izuku to gulp nervously. He pleaded with 𝐀𝐿𝐮 for a break, realizing he might have overestimated his abilities. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 teased him about his earlier bravado, but the doll advanced, swinging its hammer menacingly. Izuku barely dodged the attack, landing HRD on the floor and creating a small crater. He begged 𝐀𝐿𝐮 to stop the training, but she assured him there was only 1 hour left. An hour later, at 10 a.m., Izuku sat in the kitchen, contemplating his life choices while still feeling frustrated with 𝐀𝐿𝐮. She asked if he was still angry, to which he replied that he was, having nearly faced disaster. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 reminded him that his recklessness was his own doing. Izuku insisted he wasn't a child, but 𝐀𝐿𝐮 playfully pointed out that he often acted like one. They agreed to disagree, and 𝐀𝐿𝐮 inquired about Izuku's next plan of action. He revealed he intended to apply for a job to maintain his cover while pursuing his true goals. He had devised a schedule that allowed him to balance work and training. Izuku shared his plan, detailing his daily routine from waking up early to working and training in the evenings. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 thought it was excellent but questioned what he would do on weekends. Izuku sighed, admitting he would have to work, even though it pained him to sacrifice his time for dungeons. He explained that he needed to commit fully to avoid drawing attention to himself as a quirkless child living in a grand house. 𝐀𝐿𝐮 sighed, wishing that all men could commit as much as he did, alleviating worries for women. Izuku playfully questioned when she had gotten married, to which 𝐀𝐿𝐮 replied that she hadn't spoken to anyone else besides him, just trying to make him laugh. Izuku smirked, acknowledging that it had worked, albeit a little. He responded with a smirk. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 expressed her amazement at his ability to devise a suitable plan for the future, questioning what kind of job would align with his schedule. Izuku's smirk widened as he retrieved the day's newspaper from the counter. He suggested a job that required physical fitness, hired kids his age, offered part-time hours while he was in school, and was also available on weekends. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 declared it perfect and asked when he would apply. Izuku replied that he would do so immediately, noting that there was only an hour left to get there, emphasizing the importance of acting quickly. As he gathered his belongings and walked toward the door, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 reminded him that he had forgotten to take some books from his archives. He acknowledged her and dashed to the library. He selected 3 books, one on sensing mana, another about the rise and fall of 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 the Giant King, and the last detailing the history between 2 rival factions. He stored them in his inventory and exited, activating his sprint ability to arrive on time while using invisibility to avoid being seen. At the construction site, he approached the location indicated in the newspaper and knocked on the door. A male voice invited him in. Upon entering a small office, he scanned the room and met the gaze of a tall, muscular man, likely in his 30s. Izuku had to tilt his head back to meet the man's eyes. They stared at each other for a moment before the man broke the silence, questioning why Izuku wasn't enjoying his summer. Izuku clarified that he was there to discuss the job opening, pulling out the newspaper to show the man. The man raised an eyebrow, seemingly skeptical, while Izuku maintained an emotionless expression. The man remarked that he wasn't sure if this was a prank. Izuku insisted it was not. The man warned him that the job involved hard work. Izuku reassured him of his capabilities and caution. The man sighed, thinking that it wouldn't hurt to give the kid a chance. He agreed to consider Izuku but emphasized the importance of taking the work seriously. Izuku understood and shook the man's hand after a brief hesitation. The man introduced himself as Asahi Yuki and instructed Izuku to sit down while he fetched an application form. Upon returning with the paper, Mr. Yuki explained that he would ask some simple questions, allowing Izuku to skip any that felt too personal. Izuku nodded in agreement. Mr. Yuki began with the age question, and Izuku replied that he was 13. Mr. Yuki expressed surprise and guessed that he had just turned 13, to which Izuku confirmed. Mr. Yuki wished him a happy birthday and moved on to inquire about the job schedule. Izuku informed him that the shift ran from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and that he was available to work weekends as well. Mr. Yuki acknowledged his smartness and asked if he had adult consent to work. Izuku explained that he lived independently and was of an age to make his own decisions. Mr. Yuki then asked if Izuku was only looking to make quick money, warning him that he would be fired immediately for wasting time if that were the case. Izuku clarified that while this job was temporary, he intended to work there full-time for at least 1 to 2 years. Mr. Yuki stared at him in bewilderment, questioning why he was seeking a job when he could be spending time with friends. Izuku replied that he had no friends and needed to support himself. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 interjected, reminding Izuku that she considered herself his friend. He hesitated, acknowledging her silently. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 insisted that he shouldn't ignore her, affirming their friendship. Mr. Yuki, noticing Izuku's silence, asked if he was still present. Izuku apologized, explaining that he had momentarily lost his train of thought. Suddenly, Mr. Yuki tossed him a yellow hat, declaring that he had the job and would handle the paperwork. Izuku nodded more seriously this time, receiving Mr. Yuki's approving nod in return. Mr. Yuki instructed him to wait while he fetched someone to assist him. Izuku was confused by the term babysitter, and 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 teased him about it. He internally threatened her to be quiet. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐴 calmed him down, pointing out that Mr. Yuki was returning with someone. Izuku looked up to see Mr. Yuki with a young man in his 20s, freshly out of high school. The newcomer greeted Mr. Yuki, who introduced him as Taku, explaining that he would be showing Izuku the ropes. Taku joked about the resemblance between them, but both Mr. Yuki and Izuku quickly denied any familial connection. Taku laughed, and Mr. Yuki rolled his eyes while Izuku remained quiet, though annoyance flickered across his face. Taku accepted his role and prepared to guide Izuku in his new job. He then looked to Izuku and introduced himself as Taku Asagami, casually greeting the young hero. Izuku responded with a shy hello, introducing himself as Izuku. Deku assured him that just Deku was fine, explaining that they didn't use formalities among coworkers, though they addressed the boss with respect. Izuku agreed, feeling comfortable with the arrangement. Deku then turned to Mr. Yuki, asking what the agenda was for Izuku. Izuku felt a tick mark appear on his forehead at the nickname. Mr. Yuki explained that Izuku would help bring pipes from the trucks around the site, and after that, he would consider assigning him more challenging tasks. He looked at Izuku, confirming that he was okay with this. Izuku replied that he was fine with it, though he wanted to emphasize that he was quite capable, despite appearances. Deku teased him, saying he had already struck gold with his potential. Mr. Yuki replied that they would see, then instructed Deku to show Izuku where to go. As they were about to leave, Mr. Yuki added that Izuku could get a last name at City Hall by filling out a few forms. Izuku was surprised to receive advice from someone other than Ashbourne and was momentarily at a loss for words. He eventually agreed that he might consider it and walked out with Deku. A few hours later, Izuku was diligently completing his tasks, moving as many pipes as he could. Deku received a call for help from another employee, believing that Izuku would be fine on his own. Deku complimented Izuku on his good work and informed him that he would be leaving him to handle things. Izuku assured him it was no problem. As Deku left, Izuku continued working, contemplating a conversation with 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 to pass the time. Suddenly, he heard someone call out to him, questioning what he was doing there. Izuku replied that he was working and mentioned he was new. The man scoffed, suggesting that the boss was making a mistake by letting someone like him work there and advised him to go home before getting hurt. He then walked away. Ignoring the man, Izuku returned to his work until he received a message from 𝐀𝐮𝐴, who warned him that the same man was in danger of being crushed by falling beams in 15 seconds. Izuku was skeptical about what he was supposed to do. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 insisted that even if the man didn't deserve it, it would be the right thing for him to intervene. Izuku firmly stated that he wouldn't do it, but 𝐀𝐮𝐴 counted down the seconds until the beams would fall. As the countdown reached 0, a shout rang out, warning everyone to watch out. The beams crashed down, and chaos ensued as people rushed to see what had happened. When the dust settled, everyone was astonished to find Izuku holding up the 3 beams while the man lay safely on the ground behind him. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 exclaimed that Izuku had saved him. Izuku, feeling the strain of holding the beams, thought to himself that he regretted intervening and should have let them fall. 𝐀𝐮𝐴 suggested allocating his remaining stat points into strength, and Izuku agreed to split them between strength and intelligence. With newfound strength, Izuku managed to hold the beams more easily. Mr. Yuki approached, asking if Izuku was okay, while Deku checked on him as well. Izuku, breathing, requested help, admitting he couldn't hold them up forever and didn't know where to drop them. Mr. Yuki expressed relief that he was all right and instructed Deku to get the crane. After a few minutes, Izuku thanked Mr. Yuki for the assistance, noting that holding the beams had become uncomfortable. Mr. Yuki inquired about his arms, and Izuku assured him they were fine. The atmosphere turned serious as Mr. Yuki demanded an explanation for what had happened. Deku stepped forward to explain the situation. Izuku worried that he might be blamed for the incident, but 𝐀𝐮𝐴 encouraged him not to doubt others so much. After Deku finished explaining, Mr. Yuki turned to Izuku, asking if he really saved the man when the beams fell. Izuku confirmed it, and the man he saved acknowledged Izuku's bravery, thanking him for saving his life and apologizing for his earlier remarks. Izuku responded modestly, looking away. Mr. Yuki and Deku smiled at him, prompting Izuku to wonder if something was on his face. Mr. Yuki reassured him that he looked like a real hero. Izuku, feeling bashful, closed his eyes as Deku ruffled his hair, causing everyone to laugh. Confused, Izuku asked what was so funny. Mr. Yuki extended his hand to Izuku, officially welcoming him as a new employee after his heroic act. Izuku, surprised, shook Mr. Yuki's hand with a faint smile, promising to do his best. Mr. Yuki's smile widened at his enthusiasm, and he called for everyone to return to work, joking that Izuku might take their jobs if they slacked off. Later that day, as the workday ended, Izuku received his first paycheck from Mr. Yuki as a special reward for saving the man's life. Taku suggested they go out to celebrate, but Izuku preferred to head home. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 prompted him about the next steps, and Izuku reminded her about the schedule he had made that morning, pulling out a key from his inventory. The key was labeled as an item class E, capable of opening instant dungeons in areas where monsters resided. Izuku stood at the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 train station, gripping a katana he had retrieved from his inventory. This steel sword, enhanced with magic, was stronger and more durable than ordinary weapons. He wondered about the challenges ahead, asking if anyone knew what lay within. 𝐀𝐮𝐿, his guide, advised him to remain vigilant and calm, though she could not provide further details. Izuku accepted her response, inquiring if there was anything else he should be aware of. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 explained that during his journey into the dungeon, she would communicate with him through a system interface rather than directly. Determined, Izuku reassured 𝐀𝐮𝐿 that he would find a way for them to communicate more freely in the future. However, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 urged him to be cautious and not to underestimate the boss, sensing danger ahead. Izuku, fueled by his ambition to become the ultimate fragment, vowed to do whatever it took to succeed, refusing to accept defeat. With a nod of encouragement from 𝐀𝐮𝐿, Izuku raised the key and twisted it, causing a portal to materialize. He stepped through, entering the instant dungeon. Emerged, he found himself in a replica of the station, but it was in ruins, debris scattered everywhere. The scene was chaotic, and he couldn't help but comment on the devastation. Suddenly, a low growl caught his attention. He turned to see a red canine with metal protruding from its lower jaw, glaring at him with a menacing intensity. Steel-fanged wolf. Ashbourne noticed Ygris's troubled expression and asked what was wrong. Ygris expressed his confusion about Ashbourne's decision to train a child as his successor, clearly displeased. Ashbourne reassured him that understanding would come when the two met. Ygris suggested that Lady Yaoyorozu would have been a better choice for heir, being a descendant of both Ashbourne and Lady Yaona. Ashbourne acknowledged this but pointed out that Izuku was also his child and that Momo possessed his abilities. He believed that when they met, Izuku could teach her, as they were practically siblings. Ygris insisted that Ashbourne didn't need to go out of his way for Izuku, questioning his worthiness. Ashbourne interrupted him, silencing the room, which felt heavy with tension. Ygris pressed on, asking why Ashbourne was doing all of this. Ashbourne explained that Izuku had lost so much in a world that rejected him, where friends and family had turned into enemies due to his lack of a quirk. He felt that Izuku was crying out in pain and needed someone to help him find his way back. Ashbourne recalled how Izuku had called him his hero after he saved him and vowed to fulfill his promise to help Izuku achieve his dreams, even if it meant sacrificing himself. Ygris struggled to understand Ashbourne's perspective and doubted he ever would. Ashbourne shared that after saving Izuku, the boy had referred to him as his hero, which piqued Ygris's interest. Ygris then excused himself, apologizing for his earlier insolence, and Ashbourne granted him forgiveness. Turning his attention back to Izuku, Ashbourne saw the boy shouting at him, announcing that he had finished his training. Ashbourne congratulated him and mentioned that he had ordered food. When Izuku inquired about the meal, Ashbourne listed a variety of dishes, including Chinese dumplings and ramen. Excited, Izuku expressed his enthusiasm. Ashbourne then asked if Izuku had completed the homework he assigned. Izuku hesitated, claiming he had a good excuse. Ashbourne urged him to share it, but Izuku struggled to find words. Ashbourne decided that since Izuku had been slacking, he would increase the workload if it wasn't done by bedtime. Izuku dashed off, determined to finish his tasks. 2 years later, as Izuku approached his 13th birthday, he had surpassed Ashbourne's expectations. He had acquired knowledge that allowed him to excel without studying and learned secrets about the origins of quirks. Despite facing relentless bullying at school, he had developed a resilience that made the taunts feel insignificant, although he occasionally retaliated against his tormentors. Izuku had transformed into a striking young man, often dressed in black, blue, and purple, sporting a skull t-shirt and a jacket bearing Ashbourne's family crest. Over the years, he had grown to resent those around him, particularly after learning more about quirk creation, which fueled his disdain for the people, including 𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿, who possessed an explosive quirk. His rivalry with 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐽 had intensified, with both harboring deep animosity towards each other. Izuku's feelings stemmed from the bullying and fights they had endured, while 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐽 was irritated by Izuku's newfound confidence and the contemptuous way he regarded him. The fact that Izuku often ignored 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐽 and his friends only added to 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐽's frustration. Unfortunately, Izuku lacked friends due to 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐽's influence. On a hilltop, Ashbourne observed Izuku as he smashed a boulder into pieces. He reflected on how much stronger Izuku had become in just 4 years. Ashbourne had provided him with knowledge, training, and the pride he needed, treating him like a son. With Izuku's birthday approaching, Ashbourne felt it was time to act. He called out to Izuku, who approached, asking if Ashbourne needed him for something. In response, Ashbourne transformed into his original armored form and informed Izuku that he would have the rest of the day off for his birthday and that he had prepared special gifts for him. Izuku was astonished to see the actual 𝐸nra before him, but he had no time to dwell on his surprise as the beast awakened from its slumber and began howling. The sound resonated through the air, and Izuku suddenly felt a wave of weakness wash over him. 𝐸nra had used its ability, howling, which decreased Izuku's stats significantly. The beast's claws began to glow with a bright light as it activated white claws, enhancing its own stats. Izuku, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly drew his daggers and activated 3 skills. Bloodlust surged through him, decreasing 𝐸nra's stats. He activated Sprint, boosting his speed, and then unleashed Dagger Arts, increasing the damage of his daggers. With newfound determination, he dodged a swipe from 𝐸nra and launched an attack at its front right leg, narrowly avoiding another claw strike. He followed up with a powerful sidekick to 𝐸nra's face, pushing the creature back a few meters, before retrieving his daggers through his inventory. Despite his efforts, 𝐸nra remained undeterred and charged at Izuku, attempting to bite him but missing. The two combatants found themselves locked in a stalemate, each trying to gain the upper hand. Izuku created some distance and threw his daggers at 𝐸nra's eyes, causing it immense pain and partially blinding it. However, 𝐸nra's focus remained fixed on him. Izuku realized that 𝐸nra could sense him, but he wondered if it could also detect his mana. He charged forward and landed a solid right hook to 𝐸nra's jaw, causing the beast to stagger and whimper. Yet, 𝐸nra retaliated with a swift swipe that caught Izuku off guard. The impact sent him crashing against a wall, and he coughed up blood. As he fell to the ground, 𝐸nra licked its wounds, preparing to finish him off. Gathering his strength, Izuku stood up, dusted himself off, and wiped the blood from his mouth while keeping a watchful eye on 𝐸nra. He stretched his back, feeling a crack, and remarked to himself that he should have been finished when 𝐸nra had the chance. 𝐸nra growled in response, and Izuku retrieved a steel spear from his inventory, readying himself for the next round. With the spear in hand, he declared that he would not perish here, especially not at 𝐸nra's hands. His eyes glowed a dark blue as he threw the spear, but 𝐸nra dodged the attack. Anticipating this, Izuku leaped onto 𝐸nra's head and launched his daggers midair with all his might. 𝐸nra yelped in pain as the daggers struck its tendons. Not finished yet, Izuku drew his steel katana while still airborne and positioned himself to strike downwards. The sword pierced deep into 𝐸nra's neck, and the force of the blow sent the beast crashing to the ground, teetering on the brink of defeat. Izuku dismounted and approached 𝐸nra, sword pointed at the creature's face. He paused, noticing the acceptance in 𝐸nra's eyes. Instead of delivering a final blow, he struck his sword against the ground and retrieved a health potion from his inventory, administering a portion to heal 𝐸nra's eyes. Now able to see, 𝐸nra looked at Izuku with confusion. Izuku introduced himself, explaining that he could not leave without defeating 𝐸nra but had a proposal instead. It suggested that 𝐸nra become his shadow, promising that he would eventually become the Shadow Monarch and take care of him. 𝐸nra responded with a joyful bark, wagging its tail. Izuku reassured the creature, explaining that he would need to place it in his inventory after defeating it, which would take some time. 𝐸nra whimpered at the thought, and Izuku comforted the beast, promising to return as the Shadow Monarch. 𝐸nra liked Izuku affectionately, and he laughed, playfully scolding the wolf for getting him dirty. As he prepared for the next step, he asked 𝗀𝗱🏞 if it was ready. The wolf barked in agreement, signaling its readiness for the journey ahead. He replied by bowing its head. Izuku patted its head again, promising to see it soon. He picked up the katana from the floor and swiftly dispatched 𝗀𝗱🏞, placing its body into his inventory. The system acknowledged Izuku's victory, announcing that he had slain 𝗀𝗱🏞 and listing his achievements. Izuku had leveled up 4 times, acquired the twin fang of 𝗀𝗱🏞, and improved his proficiency in various skills, including spear proficiency, dagger arts, sword mastery, bloodlust, and sprint. He also obtained 4 of 𝗀𝗱𝗏's teeth, along with 2,000 gold and 5,000 yen. A new title, One Who Overcame Adversity, was granted to him, and he received a dungeon key, marking the completion of the first part of the tutorial. Back in the real 𝐀𝐮𝐿 train station, 𝐶𝐿INE inquired about Izuku's experience in his first dungeon. He reflected on the ease of the initial challenges but expressed his surprise at facing 𝗀𝗱🏞, questioning its E rank status. 𝐶𝐿INE expressed concern, wondering why Izuku would want to keep 𝗀𝗱🏞. He explained that he had grown fond of it. 𝐶𝐿INE noted the oddity of 𝗀𝗱🏞's presence in the dungeon, mentioning that Ashbourne had never known its location and that it wasn't at its full strength. Izuku acknowledged this, speculating that only one person had the authority to transport 𝗀𝗱🏞 at will, hinting that it was not the Beast Monarch. 𝐶𝐿INE was taken aback, realizing the implication. Izuku revealed his fear of the legendary swordsman, acknowledging the man's formidable reputation. He expressed confusion over why 𝗀𝗱🏞 had been sent after him, and 𝐶𝐿INE agreed that his uncle's actions were suspicious. She noted that allowing Izuku to fight 𝗀𝗱🏞 could leave him with lingering doubts. Izuku contemplated whether the rulers had begun to see him as a threat, which only heightened 𝐶𝐿INE's concern for him. He admitted his worries but resolved to grow stronger. 𝐶𝐿INE reassured him that he would succeed, and Izuku decided it was time to head home for a shower. As they walked, Izuku reflected on the troubling situation with his uncle, questioning the motives behind sending 𝗀𝗱🏞 to confront him. He pondered whether he could truly trust the brightest fragment of brilliant light. The brunette pointed the katana at the dog, preparing for a fight. The dog growled and snapped at the air, trying to intimidate him, but to Izuku, it just looked like another neighborhood dog. He taunted the creature, challenging it to show its strength. The wolf leaped forward, aiming to attack Izuku, but he swiftly countered with a powerful kick to its gut, sending it crashing against the wall. In one fluid motion, he brought down his katana, and the wolf fell. Izuku glanced at the spot where the wolf had been, noticing a fang on the ground. He picked it up for a closer look. It was an item that seemed practically useless on its own but could become valuable when combined with others through alchemy. He remarked on its irony, considering it might have potential in the future. As he examined the fang, Izuku noticed a pack of 20 more wolves approaching, their demeanor far less friendly. Among them, one wolf stood out, larger than the rest, likely the leader. Izuku's eyes glimmered with a dark blue hue, causing the wolves to pause their growling. He compared them to his father, dismissing their threat. 3 wolves charged at him, but in an instant, they were no longer a concern. Izuku observed the remaining wolves, who now appeared timid and fearful. He took a step forward, and they instinctively stepped back. He challenged them, asking which one would dare to fight him first. As they continued to retreat, he decided to take the initiative, declaring he would start the battle. He swiftly engaged the wolves, while the pack leader fled, abandoning its comrades. However, Izuku quickly caught up to it, grasping its head firmly. He expressed disdain for a leader that ran away from battle, and with a swift motion he ended the confrontation. Afterward, he reflected on how easy the battle had been, attributing his success to his rigorous training. Just then he cut down a black tiger mid-leap, realizing he needed to stay vigilant. 2 hours later, after defeating a horde of monsters, Izuku had leveled up 9 more times and collected nearly 100 fangs. He checked his stats, noting his progress and strength. Before him stood a boss door, radiating a dangerous aura. He pondered what lay beyond, feeling the power of whatever was inside since his sense stat had reached 51. He pulled out a return crystal he had obtained from a wolf earlier, contemplating whether to leave or press on. Ultimately, he decided he couldn't run away from challenges. He discarded the crystal and prepared for battle, equipping a pair of daggers from his inventory. The system then issued a warning about entering the boss room, emphasizing the power of the enemy within. Izuku wiped away a bead of sweat, smirking at the challenge ahead. As he opened the door, he found himself in a vast black marbled arena. In the center lay a giant silver wolf, its hind legs bound by broken chains, peacefully sleeping. This was 𝗀𝗏, the original father of wolves. The brunette felt pleased with his progress, but he hadn't forgotten about his battle with 𝗀𝗏 or his uncle's plans. For the past 3 weeks, he had been on edge. Deku, his co-worker, asked if he was doing okay. Izuku replied that he had a lot on his mind, looking down as he spoke. Suddenly, Deku playfully slapped Izuku on the back, nearly causing him to lose his balance. Izuku quickly grabbed onto the ledge to steady himself and exclaimed in surprise, questioning Deku's reckless action. Deku laughed and told him that he needed to unwind, suggesting that worrying constantly wouldn't help him in the long run. He pointed out that they had been completing their workload much faster, allowing them to leave earlier and spend more time with their families and studies. Izuku, crossing his arms, retorted that he hadn't done it for anyone else and didn't appreciate being pushed off the beam. Raising an eyebrow, Deku remarked that Izuku's activities weren't much different from what he usually did. Izuku defended his parkour skills, insisting that it was faster than walking. Deku noted that he should have sustained injuries by now, having seen Izuku perform backflips from much higher spots. Izuku shrugged off the concern, questioning why he would need to take things slow. Deku advised him that slowing down could help him appreciate the little things in life. 𝐶𝐮𝐿, another presence in Izuku's mind, chimed in, agreeing with Deku and emphasizing the need for balance. Izuku sighed, promising to think about it. Deku smiled, satisfied with his response. A co-worker called from the bottom of the building, informing Izuku that the boss wanted to see him about something important. Izuku acknowledged the message and glanced at Deku, who simply joked about the sky. Izuku felt a surge of frustration but decided to check in with Mr. Yuki. Upon entering Mr. Yuki's office, Izuku found his boss buried in paperwork and felt a pang of sympathy. Mr. Yuki welcomed him and expressed gratitude for his contributions over the past 3 weeks, noting that the operations had become easier to manage, allowing everyone more time with their families. He praised Izuku's performance, which made Izuku respond nonchalantly that he was just doing his job. Mr. Yuki, still smiling, shifted the conversation to business, asking if Izuku had any plans for the rest of the summer. Izuku explained that he had intended to visit a certain city, but his schedule wouldn't allow it. Mr. Yuki then presented an opportunity for Izuku to earn more money, explaining that another city needed workers urgently and was offering double the pay, housing included. Izuku hesitated, feeling that someone with more experience should take the opportunity instead of him. Mr. Yuki reassured him that despite being a rookie, Izuku had shown remarkable strength and dedication, making him a model worker. He revealed that he had suggested Izuku for the job along with Deku but wanted to confirm his interest first. When Izuku asked which city it was, Mr. Yuki replied that it was Jaku, the location of Ryuku's agency. Izuku fell silent, contemplating the implications. 𝐶𝐮𝐿 reminded him that it was the perfect place for their next dungeon, but Izuku felt uneasy, suspecting it might be a trap set by the rulers. 𝐶𝐮𝐿 reassured him that his uncle wouldn't go that far, urging him to trust his instincts. After a moment of contemplation, Izuku decided to accept the assignment, stating that he was heading to Jaku anyway. Mr. Yuki expressed his approval and handed Izuku the necessary paperwork, instructing him to prepare for the transfer. Izuku nodded and left to get ready. That afternoon, Izuku found joy in playing the piano. The instrument had transformed to reflect his personality, resembling a dragon piano hybrid. The seat was shaped like a tail, the keys were traditional, but the strings were a dark blue, matching his eyes. The piano featured royal blue markings shaped like roses with thorns, which Izuku found appealing, appreciating the unique design. 𝐶𝐮𝐿 informed Izuku that she had important news. She wanted to let him know that the weapons could be crafted. Izuku recalled the fangs from 𝗀𝗏 and the smaller ones, realizing they would be useful. 𝐶𝐮𝐿 presented him with options, but he could only choose 2. The first option was the Hattie Partisan, a spear with a +50 attack that could penetrate and cause paralysis. The second was the skull katana, a short sword with a +50 attack that could penetrate and burn. The third option was the hail dagger, a dagger with a +30 attack that could cause bleeding, paralysis, and burning. After considering his choices, Izuku decided on the skull and 𝐻𝗓𝗓, noting that the hail dagger was good but he already had 𝐻𝗓𝗓 with him. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 confirmed that the weapons would be ready in a week's time. Izuku then asked if she could scan the next dungeon for any outside interference. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 explained that she had checked multiple times for the rulers and his uncle, but there had been no signs of them. The only information she could gather was that the boss in the dungeon was as strong as 𝐻𝗓𝗓, likely placed there by Ashbourne for Izuku to challenge. She advised him to focus on improving his lower stats while in the dungeon. Izuku acknowledged that he had struggled with dodging attacks during a previous fight, feeling his health rapidly declining. He expressed his frustration about having to consume health and mana potions while managing multiple skills. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 pointed out that a player's stats should be in sync, emphasizing the importance of balance. Izuku understood her point. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 then expressed her anger at Izuku for nearly getting himself killed in a previous encounter. Despite his victory, she reminded him that his existence was crucial to her. Izuku apologized, promising to be more careful, though he couldn't guarantee it. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 accepted his words with gratitude. She then announced that it was time to eat, mentioning that rice, dumplings with chicken, and miso ramen were ready. Izuku raised an eyebrow, teasing her about how she spoke as if she had cooked the meal. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 quickly changed the subject, wishing him good night, even though it was only mid-afternoon. Izuku smiled, enjoying his small victory. The next day, Izuku and Taku, along with a few co-workers, were on a train heading to Jaku. Izuku was engrossed in a book about two rival factions while Taku entertained their companions with jokes. Taku then approached Izuku, sitting beside him and asking how it felt to visit a different city. Izuku shrugged, finding it not much different from anywhere else. Taku, brimming with excitement, mentioned that they were headed to the city where the pro-hero Ryukyu worked. He expressed his longing to meet her and get her autograph. Izuku noted Taku's enthusiasm, realizing that Ryukyu must be quite strong if she was in the top 20 hero rankings, nearly on par with 𝐻𝗓𝗓. Taku shared his admiration for heroes like Ryukyu, while Izuku admitted that he used to admire them but had since lost interest. Taku encouraged him to at least acknowledge the impressive quirks heroes possessed, but Izuku firmly stated that he disliked quirks. Taku pressed him, asking if he hated everything, to which Izuku replied that he only disliked things that annoyed him and the people he couldn't stand, especially since he was quirkless. Taku was confused, questioning how Izuku displayed super strength daily without a quirk. Izuku clarified that it was all his own strength. Taku insisted he prove it, claiming their friendship warranted it. Amused, Izuku agreed and waved his book in the air before putting it into his inventory. Taku was amazed, thinking Izuku had made it disappear. Izuku explained that he had a pocket dimension to store items, which was quite versatile in various situations. Taku was impressed and asked what other tricks Izuku had. Izuku activated his invisibility, vanishing from sight. Taku waved his hand in the air, searching for him. Izuku then reappeared, holding onto Taku's shoulder. Taku exclaimed that it was like Izuku had two quirks, to which Izuku replied that he didn't, but for now, he wanted to be considered an anomaly. Taku encouraged him, saying that regardless of being an anomaly, he could become an amazing hero. Izuku shook his head, stating that he had no interest in being a hero, as it would hinder his true goal. When Taku pressed for details, Izuku explained that he wanted to become the strongest and fight other strong individuals. Taku shared his own aspirations, revealing that he aimed to become a doctor after completing his online classes. Izuku acknowledged Taku's goal, noting that despite being quirkless, he was determined to save lives. He pumped his fist in the air, filled with enthusiasm. Izuku wished Taku the best of luck, confident that with his determination he would succeed. Taku reassured him that he was excelling in his classes and had a plan to pay back college expenses with his savings and future earnings. He emphasized that quirkless individuals could achieve anything they set their minds to. Izuku recalled someone mentioning that quirkless people could be anything they wanted. He pondered who had said those exact words, struggling to remember the voice but unable to picture the face. Deku noticed Izuku's distraction and asked if something was wrong. Izuku replied that he was fine, just reminiscing about a childhood friend. Deku teased him about having friends, prompting Izuku to playfully hit him in the gut. Deku winced in mock pain, and Izuku insisted they needed to leave before everyone else did. He grabbed his bag and headed for the door, urging Deku to hurry. As they made their way back, it had been a day since Izuku started working in Jaku, and he, Deku, and their co-workers were returning to their temporary housing after a long day. Deku entertained everyone with his usual jokes while Izuku contemplated a particular spell to enhance his skills. He had sought advice from 𝐒𝐮𝐿, but she was uncertain about how a monarch's abilities could evolve, especially since he was one of the first artificial human/monarch hybrids, leaving his potential a mystery he would have to unravel over time. Suddenly, Izuku's senses heightened, and he turned left just as a loud explosion echoed nearby. Deku quickly instructed everyone to stay together and take an alternate route due to a villain attack. He then realized Izuku was missing. On a nearby building, Izuku observed the source of the explosion, using his invisibility skill. To his surprise, he witnessed a battle between two giant villains and a dragon, who he recognized as Ryukyu, alongside another giant named 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and a girl he couldn't identify from his vantage point. Izuku noted Ryukyu's impressive fighting skills, acknowledging her ability to keep the public safe during the chaos. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 agreed, stating that she truly deserved her high ranking. Although Izuku had lost interest in becoming a hero, he admitted that she earned her place at the top. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 quoted Albert Einstein, and they shared a light moment. Izuku then asked 𝐒𝐮𝐿 if she knew any martial arts she could teach him. While she had some knowledge, she explained that only a real teacher could provide proper instruction. With a sigh, Izuku decided to move on, realizing the fight had concluded with the blue-haired hero's victory. As he walked down an alley, he unexpectedly encountered a villain who took him hostage, brandishing a gun. This villain was attempting to escape from the heroes but had been cornered. The villain threatened everyone, demanding they stay back. Ryukyu calmly tried to de-escalate the situation, assuring the villain that no one needed to be harmed. The villain, however, was unfazed and continued to threaten Izuku. Izuku contemplated his options, weighing his approach. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 suggested a modern tactic, reminding him to consider the villain's face. An emergency quest appeared, tasking him with defeating the villain for a reward of 5 stat points. Izuku felt a surge of confidence, knowing the villain was in for a surprise. Ryukyu, observing Izuku's calm demeanor, noted how he seemed unfazed by the danger. While the villain ranted, Izuku decided it was time to act. He addressed the villain, casually stating that he had many ways to incapacitate him. As his eyes shifted to their signature color, he warned the villain to release him before he regretted their encounter. The villain laughed, dismissing Izuku as just a kid. Izuku, undeterred, activated one of his skills, sprint, and swiftly moved, leaving the villain stunned and on his knees, coughing. Izuku feigned concern, asking if the villain was all right as he smiled like a predator toying with its prey. The villain, enraged, attempted to strike back, transforming his arm into a stinger, ready to attack. And then, with a swift and decisive motion, Izuku struck, ending the confrontation. The villain was pinned against the wall, his hand clearly injured and his throat gripped tightly by Izuku, who was applying more pressure with each passing moment. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone around them silent, including the Dragoon hero and an observer watching from above. The villain struggled to speak, asking Izuku about his quirk. Izuku, with a hint of sarcasm, explained that he was quirkless and questioned what the villain had planned for him. He then snatched the gun from the villain's grasp, waving it around as if it were a mere toy. With a swift motion, he crushed the weapon in his hand, showcasing his strength. The villain, now desperate, pleaded for mercy. Ryukyu, the Dragoon hero, attempted to intervene, urging Izuku to let the villain go. Izuku agreed, but with a twist, he would release him only on a stretcher. Ryukyu, alarmed, called for him to stop, but it was too late. Izuku delivered a powerful punch to the villain's stomach, causing a loud crack as the impact echoed through the alley, knocking the villain unconscious. Ryukyu was taken aback by the display of power but quickly regained her composure and checked on the villain, confirming he was still alive. She turned back to Izuku, questioning his motivations and whether he had a personal vendetta against the villain. Izuku clarified that he hadn't broken any laws, as he hadn't used a quirk. Ryukyu was surprised to learn that what she witnessed wasn't a quirk at all. As Izuku began to walk away, Ryukyu called out to him, wanting to ask more questions. He brushed her off, but then he heard another voice, a girl asking if they could talk. She had witnessed the fight from above and was impressed by how quickly he had defeated the villain. Izuku, feeling overwhelmed by the distractions, turned to respond but was momentarily taken aback by the striking blue-haired girl in front of him. He found himself captivated by her beauty, while she looked back at him with curiosity. 𝐶𝐮, a voice in his head, teased him about his reaction. Embarrassed, Izuku tried to dismiss the thought. The silence was palpable until Ryukyu broke it, asking if they could at least have a brief conversation. Izuku flatly refused, but the girl, now identified as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, playfully threatened to tease him if he didn't comply. Reluctantly, Izuku agreed to talk, only to find 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 standing much closer than he expected, bombarding him with questions about the fight. She was eager to know how he had defeated the villain so swiftly and what had allowed him to crack the wall with his fist. Izuku struggled to respond, feeling flustered by her proximity and enthusiasm. Ryukyu intervened, apologizing for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨's excitement and explaining that she could be a bit scatterbrained when thrilled, but she meant no harm. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 continued to express her curiosity, introducing herself and asking for Izuku's name. He hesitated, unsure whether to trust her, but sensed no malice in her demeanor. When he finally revealed his name, she expressed delight, asking if she could call him Izuku. He immediately refused, but after some playful persuasion, he reluctantly relented. As they continued their conversation, Izuku shifted the topic back to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨's abilities, noting her impressive flight during the battle. He inquired about how she managed it without a flight-based quirk. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 smiled at the question and began to explain her technique, focusing her quirk on her legs to achieve flight. Izuku listened intently as 𝐶𝐮 explained how her quirk worked, his curiosity piqued. He pondered the idea of focusing his mana to his lower appendages, contemplating whether he could create a skill that would allow him to fly. 𝐶𝐮 found his thoughts intriguing and encouraged him, suggesting that anything was possible, especially with his determination. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 noticed Izuku's distraction and addressed him, apologizing if her conversation had been annoying. Izuku reassured her that she wasn't bothersome and that her words had sparked an idea for him. He decided it was time to leave, and both 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 and Ryukyu waved goodbye. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 remarked to Ryukyu that Izuku seemed pretty cool, while Ryukyu expressed her surprise at how much power he possessed despite being quirkless. They both reflected on how Izuku had gone above and beyond in their earlier encounter. Ryukyu admitted that when she had touched his shoulder and looked into his striking blue eyes, she felt a moment of fear, as if he were someone she couldn't easily defeat. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 disagreed, finding those blue eyes to be one of his best features. She felt a strange familiarity with him, as if they had met before, but couldn't place where. Ryukyu offered to look up information about Izuku, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 quickly became flustered at the thought and asked her not to. Ryukyu chuckled at her reaction, and they shifted the conversation back to Izuku's strength and technique. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 reminded Ryukyu that she had mentioned getting permission to take on an apprentice before starting at U. Ryukyu expressed doubt that Izuku would want to learn from her. From Izuku's perspective, 𝐶𝐮 commented on how nice the woman had been, but he was lost in thought. He felt a strange sense of déjà vu upon seeing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, though he couldn't recall any specific memories with her. Back at the temporary housing, Izuku returned to find Taku scolding him for leaving without notice. He promised to inform Taku next time. On the roof of the building, he sat surrounded by 10 books about mana, preparing for another attempt at mastering his new skill. He called out to 𝐶𝐮, ready to begin. As he stood and raised his hands to the sky, he felt the blue and black flames of his mana within him. 𝐶𝐮 guided him through the steps, and he moved the mana around his body, feeling a sense of serenity as the flames danced within him. He focused on shaping the mana in his legs, repeating the process until he finally succeeded. With the final step complete, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 asked what name he would like for his new skill. He decided on kick flights, a skill that would allow him to fly, increasing his speed and granting him the ability to soar through the skies. After creating the skill, Izuku collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily from the effort. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 checked on him, concerned about his well-being after hours of work. He reassured her that he was fine and requested 3 MP potions. The system provided him with the potions, which he drank quickly, pleasantly surprised by the strawberry kiwi flavor. Izuku expressed his gratitude to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 for changing the potion's taste, and she responded with a smile. He stood up and activated his new skill, causing the area around him to glow bright blue. As the light faded, star-shaped patterns appeared beneath his feet, releasing streams of dark blue mana. With a triumphant smile, Izuku prepared to test his new ability. He jumped off the roof and soared into the sky, marveling at the beauty of the bright moon and the stars twinkling around him. Izuku felt exhilarated as he soared above the clouds, reveling in the newfound sensation of flight. He had just finished practicing with his invisibility skill and landed back on the roof, stowing his books away in his inventory. This skill had quickly become his favorite. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, his companion, expressed her pride in his progress but cautioned him to be careful not to get caught. She reminded him that it was 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 who had taught him how to use the skill, but Izuku was reluctant to acknowledge her help. He had no intention of seeing 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 again, a sentiment that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 questioned, hinting at their past encounters. As Izuku fell asleep, he pondered whether he could truly trust 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, a thought that lingered in his mind. A week passed since Izuku began working in Jaku. He had been diligent, balancing his job with his dungeon explorations. However, he kept running into 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who always attempted to engage him in conversation. Each time, he managed to slip away, even using invisibility to escape her when cornered in an alley. One day, after purchasing a few games, Izuku's day took a turn for the worse when a villain captured him, attempting to flee with a duffel bag full of cash while being pursued by 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. The villain, desperate and confused, threatened Izuku, but Izuku remained unfazed, dismissing the villain's bravado. As 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 called out to him, Izuku felt a mix of annoyance and frustration. He had been trying to avoid her for a week, but now she was right there, seemingly oblivious to the danger. The villain, growing impatient, shouted threats, but Izuku, with a calm demeanor, offered the villain a chance to let him go before things escalated. When the villain lunged at him, Izuku swiftly countered, using his natural speed to evade and strike back. The confrontation was brief, with Izuku showcasing his overwhelming strength. The villain, now battered and defeated, lay on the ground, unable to comprehend what had just happened. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 approached Izuku, her excitement evident as she praised his skills. She inquired about the sword he had used, but Izuku simply replied that she hadn't seen it before. He downplayed his actions, claiming that he had held back compared to his previous encounters. As they talked, Ryukyu, a hero, and Mr. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 arrived on the scene. They were surprised to find the defeated villain and questioned Izuku about the incident. Despite their confusion over his lack of a quirk, Izuku remained steadfast in his assertion that he had fought without one, simply relying on his skills. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽𝐽, skeptical yet intrigued, pressed for an explanation, but Izuku remained evasive, insisting that it was none of their business. The exchange left a lingering curiosity in the air, but Izuku was determined to keep his secrets close. He stated with finality. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 sighed and decided to let it go. He resolved to return and take the villain with him. Ryukyu nodded as Mr. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 departed. Ryukyu greeted 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and inquired about his well-being. Izuku replied that he was doing well, enjoying the city, but a certain someone had been following him around, turning to 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 as he spoke. 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐽 playfully remarked that she wouldn't have to keep searching for him if he would just stay and talk. Ryukyu suggested they have the chat now before he disappeared again, assuring him it wouldn't take long. Izuku, however, expressed that he wasn't in the mood for conversation. Ryukyu pressed on, pointing out that he had been in 2 hostage situations and seemed unfazed, questioning how he could not be scared. Izuku dismissed the villains he faced, claiming they were not worth his concern and a waste of time to think about. He asserted that if they ever confronted him again, the outcome would be the same as before, a seriousness in his tone that Ryukyu noticed. Ryukyu raised an eyebrow, asking if he meant he would do it again. Izuku crossed his arms, insisting he was not a child and could handle minor threats like the villain they discussed. Ryukyu pondered where this pride originated. She urged him to at least contact his parents or a guardian. Izuku revealed that he was an orphan living alone, using all his willpower to suppress his emotions. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, having overheard, wanted to ask why but held back. Izuku then announced he was leaving. Before he could go, Ryukyu invited him to visit her agency for a sparring session. Izuku questioned why he would consider it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 chimed in, explaining that Ryukyu had been eager to spar with him and teach him about fighting techniques. Izuku scoffed, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 persisted, emphasizing that Ryukyu was a great teacher and that he had claimed the previous villain was not a worthy opponent. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 expressed her longing to see what he could do, her enthusiasm evident. Izuku found it hard to refuse her, especially given her kind demeanor. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 encouraged him to accept, suggesting that fighting different opponents would prepare him for future challenges and that he couldn't really say no to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Reluctantly, Izuku agreed to fight Ryukyu, warning them not to complain when he emerged victorious. Ryukyu teased him about already thinking he had won, to which Izuku confidently replied that he was ready to start the match. At Ryukyu's agency, Izuku, Ryukyu, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 entered the large building, where many heroes, likely her sidekicks, were present. As they walked, Izuku noticed some heroes whispering and staring at him, which annoyed him, but he remained silent. An awkward silence hung in the air until Ryukyu broke it, teasing him about being nervous to fight the number 10 ranked hero. Izuku retorted that a rank was just a number and that he was more than ready to fight. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 asked if he enjoyed fighting, to which Izuku affirmed that battling strong opponents was his passion. Ryukyu thanked him for the compliment, but Izuku clarified that it wasn't meant as one. Ryukyu playfully called him harsh, but he dismissed her with indifference, eager to begin. In the training ground, Izuku and Ryukyu stood at opposite ends of the arena, a crowd of heroes watching with interest. Ryukyu warned him to get ready, promising not to hold back. Izuku, undeterred, expressed that he would be disappointed if she did. In his mind, he called for 𝐶𝐿INE to pass him his new weapon. She obliged, assuring him he could choose whether it would deal piercing damage or impact on command. Blue lightning crackled from Izuku's open palm, forming a red-pointed spear with a black handle, adorned with an orange wolf symbol. The weapon flickered with red electricity, appearing even more formidable in his grasp. Ryukyu observed the determination of the young fighter before her. Izuku expressed his confidence, stating that he hoped she wouldn't disappoint, as she would need everything she had to defeat him. He leaped back, preparing for the clash ahead. In the stands, several professional heroes were excitedly cheering for both Ryukyu and Izuku. While Ryukyu appreciated the support, Izuku remained focused solely on the battle. One hero remarked on Izuku's impressive skills, while another speculated on the outcome of the match, unsure of who would emerge victorious. Back in the fight, Ryukyu landed a powerful right hook aimed at Izuku, but his spear absorbed the impact, preventing any damage. Izuku contemplated his strategy, recognizing Ryukyu's superior combat experience and skill. He sighed, feeling frustrated with the limitations of quirks. Determined, he shifted into a sojutsu stance and activated his spear proficiency. Ryukyu called out to him, suggesting he adjust his front leg for better balance. Izuku refused, and Ryukyu charged at him again. He dodged her punch but was caught off guard by an uppercut that sent him soaring upwards. Dust filled the air, and some heroes worried Ryukyu might have gone too far, but they were soon surprised. Izuku retaliated with a kick to Ryukyu's shoulder, landing back on his feet and taking deep breaths. He acknowledged the power of her uppercut, realizing how close he had come to being overwhelmed. As Ryukyu flapped her wings, she proposed aerial combat. Izuku chuckled, finding humor in her ignorance of his capabilities. He explained that things are not always as they seem, activating his kick flight ability and soaring up to her eye level. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 watched in awe, recognizing that Izuku had successfully learned to fly like her. She recalled their earlier conversation about her flying technique and noted that while he had succeeded, his flight lacked the spirals she used. Back in the fight, Ryukyu was taken aback by Izuku's newfound ability to fly, which resembled 𝐻𝐼R's style. She asked how he had achieved this, and he explained that he had combined what he learned from Hado with his own understanding through trial and error. With determination in his eyes, Izuku declared he was ready for the challenge. Ryukyu, however, was not one to back down easily. They both prepared for the next phase of their battle, unleashing their full potential. As the fight intensified, Izuku's speed increased, allowing him to land numerous hits on Ryukyu. She retaliated with punches, most of which he managed to dodge or block. Despite the pain from her attacks, he pressed on, activating another skill that significantly boosted his speed. In a blur, he darted around the arena, leaving dark blue trails in his wake as he targeted Ryukyu, who struggled to defend herself. Izuku taunted her, questioning if this was her best effort, before attempting a powerful kick. However, Ryukyu caught him with her tail and slammed him to the ground. Pinned down, Izuku realized she had been waiting for the opportunity to seize him. Yet, he refused to accept defeat. As he activated his bloodlust ability, a wave of fear washed over everyone except 𝐻𝐼R, who remained unaffected. Ryukyu felt the familiar sensation of dread creeping in. Seizing the moment, Izuku broke free from her grasp and struck her stomach, pushing her back. Ryukyu winced in pain, and Izuku threw his spear, grazing her cheek. The electric energy coursing through her body rendered her unable to move. As she struggled to rise, Izuku stood over her, spear poised at her neck, declaring his victory. Ryukyu, acknowledging his skill, conceded with a smile, impressed by his composure and strategic thinking. Izuku asked for her thoughts on the match, and Ryukyu expressed her admiration, praising his effective strategy. She was left with questions about how he could achieve such feats without a quirk, suspecting he might possess multiple abilities. Izuku assured her that everything she witnessed was his own strength and power. 𝐻𝐼R then called out to both of them, expressing her excitement and admiration for their performance, having been captivated by the intensity of the battle. 𝐻𝐼R turned to Izuku, her curiosity bubbling over with questions. She asked him when he had learned to fly, marveling at the appealing blue stars he had created and inquiring if he could change their color. She also wanted to know if he had copied anything else from her. Izuku, feeling a bit flustered, admitted that he had indeed copied the flying technique from her explanation but had not taken anything else. He tried to hide his embarrassment as he spoke. Ryukyu then addressed Izuku, noting that while he had clearly trained his body, he seemed inexperienced with weapons. She asked him why that was the case. Izuku explained that he had focused on physical training and only knew the basics when it came to weapon techniques. Curious, Ryukyu asked who had trained him. Izuku mentioned his adopted father with a small smile, which caught 𝐻𝐼R's attention. She thought to herself how handsome he looked when he smiled, a blush creeping onto her cheeks. Ryukyu, initially skeptical, reconsidered as she observed the sincerity in Izuku's expression. She pressed for more information about his father, wanting to uncover the identity of this mysterious figure. Izuku, however, chose to keep that information to himself and thanked her for the fight. 𝐻𝐼R nudged Ryukyu, prompting her to speak up again. Izuku listened as Ryukyu offered him a chance to train under her for the entrance exams, explaining that the Hero Committee had allowed her to take on a student. She mentioned that he would have the opportunity to learn from her, go on patrols, and fight villains with a temporary license. Izuku firmly declined, leaving both Ryukyu and 𝐻𝐼R confused. Ryukyu questioned his decision, pointing out that he had the skills and power to become a great hero. Izuku expressed his disdain for heroes, feeling frustrated with their focus on fame and money, and how they often abandon people in tough situations. He declared that he wanted nothing to do with them and walked away. 𝐻𝐼R, recalling something about Izuku, called out to him, asking why he was an orphan. Izuku looked at her, his dark blue eyes reflecting a deep internal anger. He explained that being determined and quirkless often led to abandonment by friends and family. His voice was filled with emotion as he spoke. 𝐻𝐼R struggled to respond, but before she could finish, Izuku vanished from sight. Ryukyu noticed 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire's tears and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, asking if she was okay. 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire wiped her eyes, regretting her question about Izuku's past. Later, at 1 a.m., Izuku stood atop his temporary home, unable to sleep as he prepared to leave Jaku City. The events with 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire from 2 weeks ago weighed heavily on his mind, prompting him to seek distraction in the dungeon. He called out to 𝐒𝐮𝐿, who was still waking up, and asked for the address to the dungeon. 𝐒𝐮𝐿, realizing he was trying to forget about 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire, expressed her concern. She reminded him that he had hurt 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire's feelings and that she hadn't meant to provoke him. Izuku insisted on getting the address, and 𝐒𝐮𝐿 reluctantly provided directions. After an hour, Izuku arrived at the park entrance, feeling the mana trail leading to the dungeon. As he approached the gate, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. It was Ryukyu, who was surprised to see him there at such a late hour. Izuku felt irritation rising within him but held back his anger. Ryukyu explained that she often jogged in the area to escape the media's attention. Izuku, realizing he had misjudged the situation, calmed down. They both acknowledged that they were in a talking mood, and Ryukyu asked what he was doing there. Izuku mentioned that he was out for a run to clear his head. Ryukyu offered to join him, but he insisted that he preferred to run alone. She pointed out that he didn't have to be rude, and he acknowledged that he would have let her be if she had asked nicely. Despite his longing for solitude, he allowed her to stay if she wanted to challenge him again. Ryukyu smiled, recalling their previous spar, and admitted that it had been enjoyable. Izuku responded that it had been adequate, giving her credit for not boring him. However, Ryukyu's expression turned serious as she indicated there was something else they needed to discuss, or rather, someone else. Izuku was curious about what she meant. He tried to play innocent. Ryukyu pointed out that he knew what she was referring to. She expressed her confusion about him, noting that he seemed content with his current state. She could tell that he had likely experienced something that made him resent both heroes and even his own family, which caused Izuku's eye to twitch. Ryukyu continued, explaining that while it was understandable to harbor such feelings, he should not direct that hatred toward 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝑗ire. Izuku was taken aback by her words. Ryukyu reassured him that 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire was one of the kindest people and that she genuinely understood him. 𝐒𝐮𝐿, observing the exchange, was surprised by Ryukyu's insight. Ryukyu explained that 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire had not intended to upset him by bringing up a sensitive topic. She had regretted it and felt terrible ever since. Izuku stood in silence, his expression unreadable, but his eyes widened at the realization. Each word from Ryukyu felt like a blow as he imagined 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire in tears. He berated himself internally for his previous actions. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 encouraged him to admit his mistakes, assuring him that an apology would likely be met with forgiveness. Determined, Izuku decided to seek out 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire and apologize, acknowledging that he had been unkind. He activated a skill, rendering himself invisible. Ryukyu reminded him that using his quirk in public was against the rules, to which Izuku retorted that some quirks allowed for constant invisibility, and he was quirkless anyway. Ryukyu conceded his point, and they shared a light moment, with Ryukyu commenting on how challenging it was to deal with kids like him. After a brief wait to ensure no one was around, Izuku turned off his invisibility. He summoned a new weapon from his inventory, a katana crafted from the fangs of the legendary beast 𝐻𝐿. The blade was striking, adorned with a wolf symbol and surrounded by small blue flames. He swung it a few times, pleased with how perfectly it fit in his hand. He expressed his gratitude to 𝐒𝐮𝐿 for her hard work. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 reminded him that the katana's burn ability only activated with a deep cut. Izuku then inquired about his memory situation, prompted by Ryukyu's mention of 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 revealed that while searching through his mind, she found locked memories from his early childhood. Izuku preferred to keep those private, and 𝐒𝐮𝐿 respected his wishes, having already been informed about his past by Ashbourne. Continuing, 𝐒𝐮𝐿 noted a peculiar sealed door that appeared during the time he trained with his father. Izuku speculated that he must have met 𝐻𝐻𝑗ire when he was 10. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 confirmed that there was a high probability of this being true, but the memories could last anywhere from 10 days to a month. Izuku pondered why he had forgotten about her all these years. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 explained that it stemmed from his doubts about the existence of kind people after a painful event. He realized that he had requested more training and studies to suppress those memories. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 reassured him that it wasn't entirely his fault, attributing it to the cruelty of those who had hurt him. Izuku wanted to know what had caused his distress, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 warned him that it might only worsen his feelings. He decided to focus on the future instead, expressing a longing to regain his lost memories. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 informed him that, unfortunately, there was no way to retrieve them. Despite his frustration, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 encouraged him to apologize to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, as she could share their first meeting, allowing them to create new memories together. Izuku felt a mix of emotions but was determined to move forward. He shifted the conversation back to their current mission, ready to tackle the dungeon ahead. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 informed him that there had been no outside interference, making this dungeon a fresh experience. Izuku, slightly annoyed by her humor, was eager to complete the dungeon. As he entered, he noted that the new dungeon resembled the previous one, with only minor differences. He prepared himself for the challenges ahead, determined to face whatever awaited him. He focused, preparing himself for the challenge ahead. As he took a step forward, he suddenly paused when he received a notification from 𝐀𝐮𝐿. A hidden quest had been unlocked, with an optional choice. The description stated that he needed to defeat all 100 monsters residing in the dungeon, excluding the boss, and he would only gain half of the original experience points. The rewards included shadow control, silence, an unknown skill, and an S-class item. Izuku wore a confused expression, contemplating the unusual nature of this quest. He thought about the tempting rewards but realized that accepting it would limit his ability to level up. He concluded that since 𝐀𝐮𝐿 had given him this quest, she must believe he could handle it, and he pressed yes to accept it. The hidden quest was now active. A strange voice echoed, laughing mischievously. Suddenly, an arrow shot toward Izuku's chest, but he caught it effortlessly. He turned to see 18 goblins armed with weapons, some wielding crossbows. He remarked on their intelligence, breaking the arrow in his hand. The goblins laughed in unison, but Izuku pointed out that they didn't seem clever enough to remain silent. He raised his katana, declaring that they could learn from their mistakes after he sent them to the underworld. The goblins prepared to attack, but they were immediately struck by a wave of terror emanating from Izuku. His bloodlust activated, and his sword mastery kicked in. In a swift motion, the goblins were defeated, their forms disappearing in blue flames until only ashes remained. The notification confirmed that 18 goblins had been slain, and Izuku leveled up. He noted the scorekeeper's convenience and expressed gratitude to 𝐀𝐮𝐿 later. However, he was slightly disappointed with the small amount of experience gained and hoped the rewards would justify the effort. He activated his skills, determined to eliminate every monster he encountered. After a few minutes, Izuku had completed the hidden quest and was on his way to the boss room. He sat on a rock next to 20 burning monster corpses, having leveled up only 7 times, which he found a bit low, but the drops made up for it. He reflected on how effortlessly he had handled the monsters, who had only outnumbered him but had failed to capitalize on that advantage. As he contemplated his situation, a voice interrupted his thoughts, reminding him to focus on the story. The hidden quest was marked complete, and he was informed of his rewards. He had acquired the skill Shadow Control, which allowed him to manipulate his mana for strikes and defenses, though it was currently locked. He expressed frustration at the locked status of the skill and resolved to ask 𝐀𝐿𝐮 about the conditions to unlock it later. Next, he received the skill Silence, which would render his targets completely soundless. He recalled that his father had used it frequently to keep their conversations private from others. Finally, he obtained an unknown skill with a chaotic nature, which left him feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity. The word chaos in its description raised concerns for him, and he pondered the implications of such a powerful ability. Frustrated with the mysteries surrounding his new skills, he decided to focus on the S-class item he had also received. The treasured star was a divine item created from the essence of the world tree and grand system. However, his excitement was overshadowed by irritation at the dungeon and the quest rewards. He resolved to quickly finish off the boss and move on. Checking his stats, he noted his level and attributes, feeling a grimace at the sight of his chaos skill. He focused on the ominous door ahead, radiating a dark aura. With his senses heightened, he could feel a dangerous presence beyond it. He picked up his katana and walked toward the boss door, thinking about the blue-haired hero in training. He sarcastically considered how to apologize for making her feel bad, recalling a painful incident from a few years ago that had caused him distress. The memory of that incident resurfaced, reminding him of the scumbags responsible for his turmoil. Izuku gritted his teeth, recalling how he had forgotten 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 after the day 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 decided to prank him following their earlier fight. His eyes glowed dark blue as he yelled in frustration, expressing his anger towards 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. He felt a surge of bloodlust rising within him, and the ground beneath him began to tremble, resonating with his emotions. Despite the system's repeated suggestions for him to calm down, he tightened his grip on his katana, ready to unleash his fury. Taking a moment to breathe deeply, Izuku pondered why it seemed that every good person in his life vanished, often due to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's actions. He struck a nearby pillar in frustration, shattering it. With a firm resolution, he declared that he would not lose another friend because of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. After calming himself, he approached the boss door, ready for the challenge ahead. As he opened the door, he was greeted by a swampy arena that felt ancient and desolate. He walked to the center, sword at the ready, and prepared for the boss to appear, keeping his senses alert. Suddenly, the ground trembled as a massive white viper emerged, its fangs poised to strike. The creature, known as the swamp ruler 𝐻𝗔𝐾, regarded Izuku with predatory intent. Izuku acknowledged the challenge, noting that this wouldn't be easy, but he had never taken the easy path. He taunted 𝐻𝗔𝐾, who coldly responded without breaking eye contact. Realizing that 𝐻𝗔𝐾 could sense his mana, Izuku devised a plan as the serpent disappeared underground. He placed his hand on the ground, determined to outsmart the creature. When 𝐻𝗔𝐾 lunged at him, Izuku countered with a swift kick and a slash, causing the serpent to hiss in pain. However, he quickly recognized that his previous attack hadn't inflicted significant damage due to 𝐻𝗔𝐾's tough scales. Undeterred, he decided to hit harder, leaping into the air with renewed determination. As he soared upward, he became a blur, delivering a flurry of strikes to 𝐻𝗔𝐾 while evading its attacks. The serpent hissed in pain as Izuku's strikes left marks across its body. The one-sided battle continued, with 𝐻𝗔𝐾 sustaining multiple wounds. Finally, Izuku delivered a decisive blow to the serpent's skull, causing it to collapse. Breathing heavily, he approached 𝐻𝗔𝐾's fallen form, only to be surprised when it suddenly turned to dust. He realized that 𝐻𝗔𝐾 had used a skill called shedding, restoring its health while increasing its speed and attack at the cost of defense. The ground shook again as 𝐻𝗔𝐾 burst forth with renewed strength, charging at Izuku. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Izuku drew his katana, activating his sword mastery and bloodlust. 𝐻𝗔𝐾 glowed dark blue, having activated its own skill, Apex Predator, which negated any debuffs from weaker opponents. Izuku was taken aback, realizing that his bloodlust was ineffective against this powerful foe. He attempted to gain altitude to devise a new strategy, but 𝐻𝗔𝐾 was right behind him, striking with its tail and sending him flying. Struggling to recover, Izuku assessed his stats and noted the significant damage he had taken. He focused all his senses on 𝐻𝗔𝐾, but the serpent vanished from sight, reappearing behind him with its mouth wide open. In a desperate move, Izuku struck 𝐻𝗔𝐾's mouth, causing it to writhe in pain. However, the serpent retaliated with a venomous bite, immobilizing him with excruciating pain. Unable to move, Izuku could only watch as 𝐻𝗔𝐾 prepared to swallow him whole. Now trapped within the belly of the beast, Izuku realized he was at a severe disadvantage. He felt the effects of the venom coursing through him, rendering him helpless. As he contemplated his next move, he knew he had to find a way to escape this dire situation. He placed his head on the floor, indicating his exhaustion. The brunette's eyes grew heavy until he finally collapsed. The host's memory had been unsealed, and he began to recollect lost memories from his archives. In a snow-covered forest, a 10-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl were having a conversation. The boy, Izuku, rudely told her to stop following him and go away. The girl, determined, apologized and insisted she needed to talk to him. Izuku, uninterested, urged her to get it over with. She expressed her gratitude for him saving her 2 days prior, lightly smiling as she rubbed a small bandage on her right arm. Izuku acknowledged her thanks quietly, and she asked for his name, blushing. He replied that his name was Izuku, and she thanked him, giving him a hug. He awkwardly told her to stop, trying to hide his embarrassment. She promised not to hug him again and mentioned she needed to return home before her parents noticed she was gone. She then asked if she could come back to play with him, explaining that her friends couldn't visit because of the snow. Izuku, initially confused, reluctantly agreed to spare some time for a chat, not wanting to play. The girl beamed with joy, and he reminded her to be careful and not get into trouble again. She promised with a bright smile, and he asked for her name. She introduced herself as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Back in the present, Izuku's eyes widened as a tear rolled down his face. He remembered her and felt the urgency to apologize. Despite the excruciating pain, he tried to stand up, crying out in determination. He vowed not to die until he saw 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 again, roaring with resolve. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵's blessing activated, purifying the poison from his body. A title indicating his triumph over adversity was also activated, temporarily increasing all his stats. Izuku felt a wave of power wash over him, smirking at the delayed appearance of his abilities. Outside, 𝐬𝐴𝐶, the serpent, had finished its meal but suddenly felt a sharp pain in its stomach. The pain intensified, and a familiar blue katana emerged, threatening to slice downward. Izuku, sarcastically addressing the snake, expressed his intent to defeat it so he could reunite with a friend. With a swift motion, he cut down the serpent, claiming victory and storing the defeated creature for future use. He acknowledged 𝐬𝐴𝐶 as a strong opponent, stating that this was not where it belonged. Having leveled up and acquired rewards, Izuku sighed in relief as the dungeon began to disappear, returning him to Japan. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 congratulated him on his victory, praising his performance. However, Izuku, feeling frustrated, demanded answers about the hidden quest and its rewards. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 explained that it wasn't her choice to give him the quest. It had appeared before her repeatedly until she was forced to pass it on to him. She reassured him that it wasn't his uncle's doing, as she felt no connection to the ruler. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 revealed that the quest rewards were specifically meant for him, with one exception that left them both concerned: the chaos skill. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 felt a powerful energy when she accessed the system, the same energy that had given her the quest for Izuku. She struggled to describe it, noting that the skill was both potent and perilous. Izuku inquired about the danger, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 explained that the skill required a chant to be activated, but the cost remained a mystery. Izuku realized that the price could range from exhausting all his mana to potentially losing his life. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 expressed her fear that this uncertainty might explain the absence of other monarchs or human hybrids. Izuku promised never to use the skill until they understood it fully, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 hoped the cost would only be his mana. They decided to celebrate their victory instead. Izuku then thanked 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 for showing him his memory of meeting 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, but 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 clarified that she had only the power to see his subconscious, not to reveal it. This led Izuku to conclude that it must have been his father, Ashborn, who had shown him the lost memory through the system and possibly influenced his acquisition of the chaos skill. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 pointed out that Izuku seemed to have forgotten something important, specifically his apology to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Izuku slapped his forehead, realizing his mistake, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 teased him about his forgetfulness. As they continued their conversation, 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 reminded Izuku not to forget his responsibilities. He acknowledged that he needed rest, especially since it was his last day in Jaku and he felt exhausted. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 suggested checking his evolved skill, but Izuku was skeptical since he hadn't received any notifications. She encouraged him to look at his bloodlust skill, which had transformed into something new called 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐴𝐫. Izuku was amazed by the upgrade and read the description of 𝐀𝐻𝐵𝐵, which immobilized targets and reduced their stats while active. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 explained that this new skill was an evolution of bloodlust, which previously only intimidated weaker opponents. Izuku understood that the skill demonstrated his strength and wondered if it could affect inanimate objects. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 encouraged him to try it on a tree. As he activated 𝐀𝐻𝐵𝐵, the tree splintered and collapsed, leaving only debris behind. Izuku was impressed, and 𝐶𝐮 noted that he could control the intensity of the skill to avoid causing unnecessary harm. They agreed that he should reserve its full power for monsters. 𝐶𝐮 reminded him that he couldn't use it on beings stronger than himself, and Izuku was ready to return, not wanting to explain the destruction left behind. Later, Izuku returned home, seeking some relaxation after his eventful day. He enjoyed a soak in his personal hot springs while reading a book about the Grand System. After his bath, he savored some tea and discussed his locked skills with 𝐶𝐮 before bed. He mentioned shadow control, which 𝐶𝐮 confirmed was indeed useful. As he prepared to sleep, he took out the treasured star from his inventory and questioned its purpose, wondering if it was truly a divine item or if he would have to wait a long time to discover its significance. 𝐶𝐮 laughed, enjoying his frustration. Izuku felt a wave of luck wash over him as he rolled his eyes. He thought to himself that he was eager to hear what 𝐶𝐮 had to say. 𝐶𝐮, on the other hand, felt there was no rush. She explained that when he mentioned Ashbourne as the likely source of his quest, she felt a special connection to the item. After a moment, she realized she could become part of the divine item itself and communicate through it. Izuku's realization dawned on him. He would be able to converse with her directly instead of just reading her messages. 𝐶𝐮 confirmed this, clarifying that while one part of her would communicate with him, another part would manage the system's functions. He found the idea appealing but questioned why she hadn't mentioned it earlier when they had plenty of time. 𝐶𝐮 explained that if she went through with this, there would be no turning back, and she would lose her beloved emojis. Izuku was taken aback, raising an eyebrow at her reaction. 𝐶𝐮 expressed her frustration at having to make such a difficult choice, lamenting the unfairness of it all. Izuku gently urged her to enter the star, trying to reassure her. She protested about her emojis, but he insisted she needed to proceed. After a lengthy back and forth filled with playful banter, 𝐶𝐮 finally relented, agreeing to enter the treasured star. As the treasured star began to rise, it illuminated the room with a soft blue light. 𝐶𝐮 requested permission to enter and become one with the divine item. The terms were clear. She would be a part of the system, allowing for vocal communication, but she would not be able to stray more than 50 feet from Izuku. Without hesitation, he granted permission. The treasured star enveloped the room in a blinding light, prompting Izuku to close his eyes. When he opened them again, the star floated close to his shoulder, and the transfer was complete. Izuku's concern for 𝐶𝐮 grew as he wondered why she wasn't speaking. He called out to her, and she responded in a dark tone, repeating his question. But then her mood shifted, and she expressed her excitement about finally being able to talk, circling around him joyfully. Relieved, Izuku commented on her youthful voice, which she explained was a reflection of her age. He reassured her that it suited her perfectly. 𝐶𝐮 expressed her gratitude, bowing to him, but he reminded her that there was no need for such formalities yet. They shifted the conversation away from skills and items to discuss Izuku's situation with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. He felt embarrassed at the mention of it, but 𝐶𝐮 teased him, suggesting a playful name for the situation. Despite his protests, she encouraged him to confront his feelings. Izuku resolved to see 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 the next day after school, planning to apologize to her. 𝐶𝐮 expressed her concern about school, having seen some of his memories. She suggested they could stay inside or do homeschool instead, knowing he was capable of excelling without attending. Izuku sighed, admitting that he shared her feelings about school. He had even contemplated leaving Japan at times, but he realized he had changed. He no longer ran away from challenges. Instead, he faced them head-on, a lesson taught by his father. 𝐶𝐮 acknowledged his growth, expressing her honor in being his system and guide. When she added a personal touch to her statement, Izuku questioned her, but she quickly dismissed it. He expressed his gratitude for her support, reaffirming his appreciation for her hard work. He praised his partner and gently patted the head of the treasured star like a brother would his sister. 𝐶𝐮 declared that she wouldn't let anyone bother Izuku anymore. Izuku was confused and asked what she meant. 𝐶𝐮 explained that if anyone made fun of him or bothered him, she would retaliate. Izuku questioned her intentions, and 𝐶𝐮 suggested that if they didn't leave him alone, she would spread rumors about the girls and boys at school. Izuku was taken aback, trying to process her words. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 assured him that she was serious and even hinted at making rumors about 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's academic success being tied to special classes, which made Izuku's eyes widen in disbelief. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 laughed maniacally, excited about the chaos she planned to cause. Izuku urged her to restrain herself, suppressing a laugh. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 then asked if he was still working for Mr. Yuki, to which Izuku confirmed he was. He explained that the pay was good and he needed to maintain his cover to explain his luxurious house. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 sarcastically commented on his cover, and Izuku told her to be quiet. As they said goodnight, Izuku realized 𝐶𝐮𝐻, being an AI, didn't need sleep. She humorously pretended to snore, teasing him. Izuku, feeling a mix of annoyance and affection, wrapped himself in a blanket. In his thoughts, he wondered about the job class dungeon key, but 𝐶𝐮𝐻's telepathic warning made him chuckle at her fierce protectiveness. The next morning, Izuku woke up ready to start his day. After showering and preparing a hearty breakfast, he dressed in his new middle school uniform, which 𝐶𝐮𝐻 criticized. Finishing his meal, he watched some TV, but nothing caught his interest. He then checked on his motorcycle in the garage, expressing disappointment that it still wouldn't start. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 encouraged him to be patient, assuring him it would eventually wake up and be happy to see him. Izuku promised to return after work and closed the garage door. Unbeknownst to him, the motorcycle's headlights glowed a bright blue before fading. As he walked to school, he encountered someone he wished to avoid, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who was with 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 and his two friends. Izuku mentally questioned who 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was, feeling frustrated as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 taunted him. Ignoring 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴, Izuku focused on 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴, who had a smug grin and was creating small explosions from his palms. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 and his friends mocked Izuku, who responded with irritation, stating it was too early for their antics. When 𝐒𝐮𝐴 accused him of lying about his living situation, Izuku revealed he had been kicked out of the orphanage after a confrontation with the staff. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 scoffed at him, dismissing his claims. Izuku, feeling defiant, declared he would show them how he had stood up for himself. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 warned him telepathically to walk away, but he was determined. He approached 𝐒𝐮𝐴, glaring at him as his eyes glowed with intensity. The atmosphere grew tense until Izuku finally spoke, expressing his disdain for 𝐒𝐮𝐴 and his threats. He warned 𝐒𝐮𝐴 not to get in his way again, his eyes darkening and slitting, making him appear more intimidating. 𝐒𝐮𝐴's friends instinctively stepped back, surprised by Izuku's sudden confidence. 𝐒𝐮𝐴, enraged, prepared to unleash an explosion aimed at Izuku. Just as Izuku was about to retaliate, a voice interrupted them. Mitsuki, 𝐒𝐮𝐴's mother, yelled for him to come home and clean up a mess he had made. The unexpected interruption left everyone confused, and Izuku, 𝐒𝐮𝐴, and the others thought in unison, "What the hell?" 𝐶𝐮𝐻 sighed in relief at the distraction. 𝐒𝐮𝐴, frustrated by his mother's intervention, vowed to deal with Izuku later before storming off, shooting one last glare at Izuku, who remained unfazed. As Izuku resumed his walk to school, he felt a finger poke his shoulder. It was Fingers, reminding him that they were still there. Fat Ass chimed in, warning him not to forget about them. He activated his wings, and Fingers suggested that Izuku hand over his wallet in exchange for freedom. Izuku, undeterred, challenged them to try. Fatty, flying toward Izuku, expressed disappointment that they would have to resort to violence instead of letting him off the hook. As Kaiser Aura activated, both Fatty and Fingers felt an overwhelming force pushing them down, instilling fear in them as they realized the true power of Izuku. Izuku stepped closer, asking if they still wanted to fight. Trembling under his gaze, they both pleaded for mercy. Satisfied, Izuku resumed his walk, unaware that his eyes had returned to normal. 𝐶𝐮𝐻, using her telepathy, laughed mischievously, prompting Izuku to question if she was behind the chaos. She confirmed that she had mimicked Mitsuki 𝐒𝐮𝐴's voice, enjoying the havoc she had caused. Izuku found it hilarious and praised her for the clever trick. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 reminded him that they should move on, and Izuku agreed, activating his invisibility and sprint abilities. He was astonished to find that his speed had increased significantly. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 noted that it was close to evolving, and when Izuku asked for a name for the upgraded skill, she suggested either Quicksilver or Night Dash. He chose Quicksilver, finding Night Dash too cartoonish. At Aldra Junior High, Izuku arrived at school unnoticed, but his demeanor shifted dramatically upon entering the gate. He became cold and resentful toward his classmates and teachers, a stark contrast to his usual calm self. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 struggled to recognize him, sensing that this was not the Izuku she knew. As he walked between classes, whispers followed him, and to retaliate, Izuku used a small portion of Kaiser aura to instill fear in those who dared to approach him. This behavior confirmed 𝐶𝐮𝐬's concern that this wasn't the real Izuku, and she felt compelled to address his troubling state. During lunch, 𝐶𝐮𝐬 initiated a conversation, expressing her concern about his change in attitude. Izuku acknowledged that he had always acted with disdain around others. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 pressed him for more, and he revealed that he found his classmates irritating but had refrained from acting on his feelings because they were not worth it. He viewed their actions as distractions, treating them as insignificant. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 pointed out that while he could ignore them now, there was a limit to everything. She warned him about the consequences of retaliation if they crossed a line. Izuku, with a fierce glow in his eyes, declared that if they pushed him too far, he would show them why the Shadow Monarch was feared. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 pleaded with him not to become heartless, reminding him of his true nature and the love 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 had for his kindness. Izuku fell silent, contemplating her words. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 continued, emphasizing that no one would love a murderer, and reminded him of the bond he shared with 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻. Though he agreed not to go that far, he still intended to retaliate. 𝐶𝐮𝐬 reassured him that she would always be there for him, as his system. As they moved on from the heavy topic, they continued to converse while ignoring the instructor. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐵𝐾𝐲 was the subject of laughter among their classmates after the morning incident, and although Izuku wanted to laugh, he refrained from showing any emotion in front of them. Curious about 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻's whereabouts, Izuku asked 𝐶𝐮𝐬 for help in finding her. She revealed that she was at 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, specifically in the hero course with her friends Mirio Togoda and Tamaki Amajiki. Izuku was intrigued by how 𝐶𝐮𝐬 knew this, and she explained that she had gathered details about 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 for him, hinting at a potential romantic date. She spoke in a cheeky tone, and Izuku's thoughts were filled with frustration towards 𝐶𝐮𝐬. Her telepathic voice chimed in, expressing her affection for him, but he sighed, eager to move on and not be late for work. With a surge of energy, he activated his invisibility, kick flight, and sprint abilities, accumulating a significant speed boost as he leaped into the air, heading towards you. From 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻's perspective, she sat in her seat, maintaining a somber expression since her last conversation with Izuku. Although she smiled to avoid worrying her friends, she gazed out the window, feeling guilty about the previous encounter. Her thoughts were filled with regret over asking a heartless question, fearing that Izuku would never speak to her again. She sighed and rested her head on her desk. Yuyu, a girl with pink hair, called out to her, trying to break through 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻's gloom. She urged 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 to lift her spirits, reminding her of her usual cheerful demeanor. Despite 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻's attempts to brush it off, Yuyu pressed for answers, sensing something was wrong. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 insisted she was fine, but Yuyu, unconvinced, continued to probe. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 finally relented, asking Yuyu to keep it a secret from Mirio and Amajiki. She began to share her history with Izuku, recalling how they had met when she was 11 and he was 10. Yuyu teased her about her interest in younger boys, which caught the attention of their teacher, Midnight. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 groaned at the teasing but continued her story. She recounted a winter break incident where Izuku had saved her, leading to a close friendship filled with shared interests. However, after the break, they lost touch. She later saw him during her apprenticeship under Ryukyu, where he impressively defeated a villain who had taken him hostage. It was then that she realized who he was, but her excitement led her to ask a question that angered him. Yuyu hugged 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, understanding her guilt. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 expressed her worries about whether Izuku would forgive her, but Yuyu reassured her that he would, suggesting he would need to prove himself to their friends first. They shared a light moment, with 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 thanking Yuyu for her support. Meanwhile, Izuku soared through the sky, marveling at the vastness of Yu. He reflected on its reputation as the greatest hero school in the world, impressed by its size. 𝐶𝐮𝐬, his system, provided him with information about the school, explaining its purpose and the facilities designed for real-life training scenarios. Izuku questioned her about the school's significance, and 𝐒𝐮𝐿 highlighted that it was where the legendary #1 hero, All Might, had once studied before heading to America. Izuku's interest peaked as 𝐒𝐮𝐿 detailed All Might's extraordinary achievements, emphasizing that he had reached incredible strength through his quirk alone, without any supernatural means. Izuku was in awe, having heard stories of All Might's ability to end battles with a single strike, regardless of the odds against him. He looked down, lost in thought. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 asked if he was okay, and he replied that he was just reminiscing about how he used to be a huge fan of All Might when he was younger. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 suggested that he could follow in All Might's footsteps, but he dismissed the idea, stating that ever since training with his father, he wanted nothing to do with heroism. To him, it felt meaningless. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 questioned if that was truly how he felt, and he asserted that he had made up his mind years ago. He wasn't a hero and needed strength, not a flashy costume. She pressed him on what he would do with that strength, and he replied that he would continue to live for himself. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 called him an idiot, reminding him that he wasn't alone and that he had her, freind, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in his life. He pondered her words, admitting that maybe she was right. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 decided to change the topic, expressing her annoyance with his gloomy demeanor. He agreed, and she shared a fun fact about you, mentioning that the principal was a very intelligent creature that resembled a dog, bear, and mouse. Izuku recalled that his father had spoken about the principal a few times, calling him a genius. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 playfully claimed to be almost as smart as him, showcasing her inflated ego. Izuku sarcastically commented on her humility, but she quickly caught onto his sarcasm. As they continued, 𝐒𝐮𝐿 suddenly urged him to be quiet and look down. He pointed out that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was walking out of the front gates with 𝐻𝐻. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 told him to go to her, promising to stay quiet. Izuku hesitated, worried that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 might not forgive him. 𝐒𝐮𝐿 reassured him that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had been his friend before and would be again, encouraging him to approach her before she had to intervene. Izuku, feeling a mix of determination and anxiety, flew down to see 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in her school outfit, momentarily captivated by her beauty. He mentally chastised himself for coming to admire her instead of apologizing. Strengthening his resolve, he called out to her. 𝐻𝐻 turned in the direction of his voice but saw no one. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 also looked around, confused. Izuku pointed to himself, revealing that he was right next to them. When he turned off his invisibility, some nearby students jumped in surprise. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 scolded him for startling everyone, and he apologized, explaining that he had forgotten to turn off his invisibility. He then fell to her height, trying to ease the tension. They exchanged awkward greetings, with 𝐻𝐻 breaking the silence by asking if he knew. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Izuku confirmed his identity, ignoring the compliment about his looks. 𝐻𝐻 revealed that they had been talking about him, prompting a silent protest from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. When Izuku mentioned that he needed to talk to her privately, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 agreed, noting that people were starting to stare again. Izuku activated his aura, causing the onlookers to look away. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 flicked his forehead, reminding him to be considerate of others. He insisted that he disliked being stared at and urged her to lead the way. As they walked, some of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's classmates attempted to follow but were stopped by a blonde-haired boy and his shy friend. The boy dismissed the crowd, assuring them that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had been emotional and they hadn't seen her like that in years. Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 walked in comfortable silence until they reached a bridge, both expecting the other to speak first. They simultaneously apologized, leaving 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 confused about what he was apologizing for. Izuku explained that he was sorry for what had happened back in Jaku and mentioned that he had met Ryukyu during his run, who had informed him about 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's feelings. He expressed his sincere regret to her. He apologized once again, slightly bowing. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 expressed that Izuku shouldn't be the one to apologize. She felt it was her fault for asking a sensitive question. Izuku admitted he had overreacted due to some family issues, sharing his disdain for many heroes, though he clarified that he didn't hate her. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 acknowledged that her question was unnecessary, and her emotions got the better of her as she began to cry a little. Izuku reassured her that it was okay, understanding she hadn't intended to upset him. He stepped closer, telling her it wasn't her fault and that she didn't need to feel bad anymore. If she still felt the need to apologize, he would accept it, but only if she accepted his apology as well, extending his hand to her like he had done in the past. Grateful, 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 hugged him, surprising Izuku, who returned the gesture. After a few moments, 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 noticed something floating beside Izuku. She asked him about the floating object, curious about 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. Izuku mentioned that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 had promised to stay in his backpack. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 chimed in, stating it was boring in there and that she wanted to see them make amends, finding them adorable together. Both teens exchanged flustered glances and took a step back. Izuku called out to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, his face slightly reddening. Meanwhile, 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 wondered why she had hugged Izuku so suddenly, recalling how nice it felt. Izuku thought 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 would remain quiet, but she insisted that rules were made to be broken. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 interrupted, asking who 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 was. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 introduced herself as a project created for Izuku by his adopted father, expressing her honor in meeting 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻. She moved closer, and 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, feeling flattered, requested to be called by her name. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 obliged, and 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 complimented her adorable voice. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 returned the compliment, noting that she had chosen her voice herself. Izuku interjected, reminding them that he was still present. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 apologized and returned to Izuku's backpack. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 waved goodbye to 𝐒𝐮𝐴 and turned to Izuku, eager for an explanation. Izuku explained that 𝐒𝐮𝐴 was a floating automaton created by his adopted father, sometimes acting like an annoying child but ultimately kind. He mentioned that he had just received her the previous day and that she couldn't leave his side. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 learned that 𝐒𝐮𝐴 had to stay within a certain distance but could be kept in his bag during school. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 playfully complained about being crammed with too many books, prompting 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 to laugh hysterically. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 grumbled about being laughed at, while Izuku rolled his eyes at her antics. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 wiped away a few tears from her eyes, finding Izuku's friend amusing. Izuku agreed that 𝐒𝐮𝐴 was funny, and 𝐒𝐮𝐴 proudly affirmed it. Izuku then asked what they had been discussing, recalling that they were apologizing to each other. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 confirmed they had both forgiven one another for their mistakes and asked if he wanted to be friends again. Izuku, surprised yet happy, agreed to rekindle their friendship. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 encouraged him to smile more, saying he would look better with one. Izuku responded that he only smiled when he won, smirking at her. She teased him about being cheeky after beating Ryukyu, to which he shrugged, claiming that one victory was enough. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 reminded him that Ryukyu had been holding back during their spar, and they both echoed that sentiment. Izuku lamented that it wasn't fair, feeling he had much to improve. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 reassured him that he had put up a better fight against Ryukyu than she had. Curious, Izuku asked why Ryukyu had wanted to fight him again. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 explained that she wanted him to become her apprentice for first-hand experience before attending you. Just then, Izuku's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. He answered, realizing he was late for his shift. Mr. Yuki informed him that he would let it slide this time but urged him to arrive quickly. After ending the call, Izuku turned to 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, apologizing for having to leave. Before he departed, she asked for his phone number, pulling out her phone. They exchanged numbers, both feeling embarrassed but going along with it. 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻 promised to call him soon, and Izuku expressed that he was counting on it. As he activated his kick flight, he reflected on how happy he felt whenever he saw her, particularly admiring her appealing smile. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 teased him, revealing she could read his thoughts, which made Izuku feign ignorance. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 continued to playfully tease him about his feelings for 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, prompting him to protest. Later that night, Izuku was sleeping soundly, content with how his day had ended with 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, when he was abruptly awakened by his phone ringing. He rubbed his eyes and double-checked the number. Izuku wondered who in the world he had given his number to, as the only person who had it was 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻, and she wouldn't hand it to a complete stranger. He thought it couldn't be his uncle, this might just be a coincidence. He needed to ask 𝐒𝐮𝐴 for help. He gently nudged his system awake, whispering for her to wake up. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 yawned and expressed her annoyance at being disturbed from her dream. Izuku, not in the mood for their usual banter, urged her to listen. He explained that someone was calling him and it wasn't 𝐻𝐻𝐼𝐻. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 noted that since he had only given his number to her, It was strange for someone else to have it. Izuku agreed, feeling that something was off and unsure of what to do. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 suggested he answer the call while she tracked it. Izuku confirmed she could do that, but she didn't want to get too involved. She instructed him to keep the caller occupied for at least 5 minutes. He agreed and counted down before answering the call. He greeted the caller, who asked if his refrigerator was running, sounding like someone from a company. Confused, Izuku responded affirmatively. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, through telepathy, urged him to keep talking. The caller then joked that it was in Izuku's best interest to go catch it, laughing on the other end. Izuku realized he was being pranked and was about to hang up when the caller pleaded for him to hear a few jokes he had prepared. Despite his irritation at the late hour, Izuku reluctantly agreed to listen to one joke, warning the caller not to call again. The caller promised and launched into his first joke, which Izuku found lacking. After a couple more attempts, one joke finally made him laugh. The caller, revealing himself as 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲, mentioned Izuku's name, causing Izuku's eyes to widen in surprise. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 teased him about their family connection but left Izuku with more questions than answers before hanging up. Izuku called out for 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲, who quickly informed him that the call had originated from the North Pole. He was taken aback by the revelation. Meanwhile, in a large castle at the North Pole, a young boy with white hair sat on a throne made of ice, conversing with a floating ice shard named Boreas. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 found the conversation amusing, but Boreas criticized him for prank-calling Izuku without revealing his identity. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 defended his actions, insisting it was all in good fun and that he just wanted to connect with his cousin, who he believed was different from their more malevolent relatives. Boreas expressed concern about 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲's approach, but 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 remained confident in Izuku's character. He appreciated that his uncle had provided him with Izuku's number, which saved him from using his owl to check on him. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 decided he would rather meet Izuku in person once they had both grown stronger, believing it would be a better experience. Boreas cautioned 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 about the dangers he might face, reminding him that while he had an immortal body, he was not invincible. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 acknowledged the need for training, inspired by Izuku's dedication to his goals. He was determined to reach new heights alongside his rival, confident that they would both improve in time. Boreas hoped that the two of them would become good friends when they met. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 assured Boreas that he wouldn't have to worry, as he was the coolest person in the world. Boreas responded with a light-hearted jab about 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲's puns, which prompted a shrug from 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲. Boreas pondered what he could do with 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲's antics. He then asked when they would depart for the land in the east. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 estimated it would be in about 8 months, but if he increased his training, they might leave earlier. He expressed his eagerness to see all the appealing people Japan had to offer, insisting that the sooner they could go, the better. Boreas sighed, wishing to avoid this topic again. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 continued, excitedly commenting on the flashy hero costumes he had seen, which he described as something out of his wildest dreams. Boreas reprimanded him, stating that his infatuation with women was unbecoming of the Monarch of Frost, but 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 waved off the concern. He declared that he was a proud man, and a proud man was unashamed. Boreas urged 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 to reconsider his dreams of multiple relationships, suggesting that one partner was enough. 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 countered that having more than one partner could be better, teasing Boreas about his counting skills. Boreas reminded 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 that he was a system and could count just fine, to which 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 cheekily suggested that Boreas count how many partners he would have. Suddenly, 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 received a notification and excitedly declared that it was time for manga, somersaulting off his throne and rushing to his bedroom. Boreas reflected on what to do with 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐲. 3 days passed since Izuku and 𝐦𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐲 had apologized to each other, rekindling their friendship and exchanging contact information. They often sent each other messages, checking in during their busy days. Even when 𝐦𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐲 texted him during lunch while he was in class, Izuku would respond through 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲 in silence to keep their connection discreet, especially from Bakugo. However, not everything was perfect. After an unknown caller revealed Izuku's identity as the next Shadow Monarch, he remained on high alert. While sitting in class, he tuned out the teacher to discuss the unknown caller with 𝐀𝐮𝐿𝐲, trying to determine if the caller was an ally or an enemy. He reviewed the details of the call, noting that it originated from the North Pole, which suggested it might be the 𝐻𝐿𝐴's base of operations. 𝐶𝐮𝐿 confirmed his thoughts, adding that the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 had made some jokes, which Izuku found lame. Izuku considered the implications of the 𝐻𝐿𝐴's knowledge about the supernatural and the sovereigns. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 warned him that the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 might also know about the ruler, which raised concerns. Izuku speculated whether the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 could be like him, a vessel for a monarch's power, a thought that frightened 𝐶𝐿𝐴. He dismissed the idea that it shouldn't be possible, but the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 had urged him to get stronger, leading to a realization. He wondered if the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 could also have a system like 𝐶𝐿𝐴. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 explained that she was created from the Grand System and that only Lord Ashbourne and Bright could create another like her. She expressed uncertainty about what Ashbourne had been doing all these years. Izuku reassured her that it wasn't her fault for not having answers. He acknowledged that parents often kept secrets for various reasons, but he trusted that there were good intentions behind them. Izuku felt grateful to 𝐶𝐿𝐴, recognizing that she had helped him escape the orphanage, grow stronger, and reconnect with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. He thanked her sincerely, which touched 𝐶𝐿𝐴, who noted that Izuku's sweet side would impress 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 even more when they started dating. Izuku turned away, trying to hide his embarrassment. As they continued their conversation, Izuku declared that no matter how many secrets and mysteries their world held, they would uncover them all. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 reminded him that they still needed to identify which monarch the unknown 𝐻𝐿𝐴 could be, and they both realized how easily they had gotten distracted. They shared a laugh, recalling past discussions, but quickly refocused on their current task. Both Izuku and 𝐶𝐿𝐴 mentally shouted in unison. After a few moments of calming down, Izuku reflected on their situation, feeling more focused. He thought it was time to return to the topic of the unknown 𝐻𝐿𝐴 and which sovereign he was training to become. Considering the 𝐻𝐿𝐴's cold climate, he speculated that he could be the next monarch of Frost. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 quickly dismissed this idea, explaining that the monarch of Frost was an ice elf, a savage race from the dark dimension known for their ruthless nature. Izuku pondered the implications, realizing that if his uncle and father tried to force the sovereign's hand, the other monarchs would likely intervene, reigniting the Great War. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 confirmed his thoughts, adding that it was unlikely the sovereign would ask his father or Lord Bright for help. The reason was a simple power struggle. The fear of being usurped by someone deemed more worthy or powerful was a constant concern. Izuku understood that the sovereign of Frost would never willingly relinquish his throne to his child due to greed. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 noted that the monarch of Frost failed to recognize the value of having someone to carry on his legacy. Izuku scoffed at the idea of rejecting progress and change out of fear, calling the monarch a fool. He pointed out that this was why the other monarchs had never had children, even though they could if their partners were strong enough. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 reminded him that they still had evidence to support their claims. Izuku was surprised to hear this, and 𝐶𝐿𝐴 hinted that if Lord Ashbourne could travel anywhere by portal, so could the other monarchs. This meant that if the original monarch was involved, he would have come after Izuku immediately. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 concluded that the unknown 𝐻𝐿𝐴 could actually be the sovereign of Frost's vessel. Izuku realized they had a lead but worried about what would happen when they eventually met. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 warned him that the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 seemed eager to fight, and if they clashed, it could lead to countless casualties. Izuku recalled his father's words about the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 being one of the strongest monarchs, capable of battling other sovereigns without breaking a sweat. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 reminded him that their focus should be on Izuku and the unknown 𝐻𝐿𝐴, both training to succeed their predecessors. She emphasized that as a human, Izuku had the potential to become everything he dreamed of, capable of surpassing the Shadow Monarch. The unknown 𝐻𝐿𝐴 had that same opportunity, which made Izuku anxious about the future. He feared that the 𝐻𝐿𝐴's strength could become a disaster, endangering many lives. A chilling image of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 frozen appeared in his mind, intensifying his concern. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 snapped him out of his anger, urging him to calm down. Izuku apologized, and she asked what had nearly pushed him to unleash the full power of Kaiser's aura in class. He admitted it was about 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵, looking down in shame. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 reassured him that if they decided to fight away from the public, no one would be in danger, including 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵. Izuku questioned whether the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 would agree to those terms, but 𝐶𝐿𝐴 insisted that if he was eager to fight, he would have no choice. Izuku made a mental promise to eliminate the 𝐻𝐿𝐴 if he became a threat. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 found it interesting that they could be considered cousins in a way, and she asked if he would treat him as family if he turned out to be a good person. Izuku was intrigued by the idea but remained non-committal. Before their showdown, 𝐶𝐮𝐻 suggested upgrading Izuku's defenses. He was confused, claiming he had spent all his points. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 introduced him to Rinnega's dust scales, explaining their effects. Izuku groaned at the thought of consuming the contents of the bag, but 𝐶𝐮𝐻 encouraged him, promising to make it taste good. He playfully stuck his tongue out, acknowledging her. Their teacher called out Izuku's name, reminding him to pay attention in class. The class snickered at his distraction. Izuku apologized and approached the front of the class to solve a problem, surprising his classmates who had never seen him apologize before. After completing the task, he asked to go to the bathroom, receiving permission from the teacher. In the bathroom, Izuku found all the stalls empty and pulled out a black sack filled with purple-blue dust from his inventory. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 instructed him to take out 2 water bottles and a vase, and he quickly deduced that the vase was for mixing the dust scales with water. After stirring the mixture, he was ready to drink. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 encouraged him to chug it down, and he begrudgingly complied. As he drank, he noted that the taste was not bad. Almost immediately, he felt the effects as his skin became more durable. The system confirmed that any damage inflicted on him, whether magical or physical, would be permanently reduced by 20%. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 asked how he felt, and he confidently stated that he could withstand Ryukyu's hits better than before, smirking at his newfound resilience. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 expressed her eagerness to see him in action. She giggled as Izuku expressed his concern about getting hurt. He wondered if his new hardened skin was noticeable. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 informed him that while his skin cells had indeed hardened and resembled Rinnega's, they were a lighter blue. Izuku asked if his skin could become more durable, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 confirmed it was possible, though it would be challenging to increase his percentage beyond 50%. Izuku acknowledged that 50% was still a significant improvement for damage reduction, potentially saving his life one day. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 praised his thoughtful approach. During lunch under a shady tree, Izuku prepared to enjoy his homemade bento box when his phone rang. He noted the call was unexpected, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 teased him about it, suggesting it might be someone interested in him. He dismissed her comment and focused on the call, recognizing it was 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. She greeted him warmly, and he smiled at her familiar tone. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was calling to check on 𝐶𝐮𝐻, and Izuku assured her that 𝐶𝐮𝐻 was fine, albeit a bit annoying. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 then revealed she wanted to discuss the upcoming 𝐻𝐿 Annual Sports Festival, a major event broadcasted across Japan. Izuku feigned ignorance, prompting 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to chide him for being mean. She finally confessed that she wanted him to come and cheer for her during the festival, as she would be participating with her class. Izuku hesitated, noting the stadium would be crowded, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 insisted it would be a great experience and she wanted to see him again. After some internal debate, he agreed to attend, feeling a rush of warmth at the thought. After hanging up, Yu approached 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, eager to know if Izuku would cheer for her. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 confirmed he said yes, and Mirio playfully remarked about meeting her mysterious boyfriend. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 quickly clarified that Izuku was not her boyfriend, though her blush suggested otherwise. Tamaki, shy as ever, expressed disbelief in her denial, prompting a groan from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Meanwhile, Izuku reflected on the conversation, feeling a mix of emotions. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 encouraged him to embrace the opportunity to cheer for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, teasing him about his aversion to crowds. He grumbled in response, recalling a recent job class dungeon and asking 𝐶𝐮𝐻 when it would be ready. She warned him he might not like the answer, leading him to check his inventory. The details revealed he would have to wait 4 weeks before entering the dungeon, which frustrated him. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 explained that the delay was the work of the Paladin of Death, who wanted to give him time to grow stronger before the battle. Izuku inquired about his chances against his father's knight, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 candidly stated they were not good, estimating a survival rate of only 30 to 40%. Determined to improve, Izuku asked how he could level up without a dungeon. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 proposed that he could defeat some villains at night, noting that his body had been changing since becoming a player, allowing him to forego sleep for a time. Izuku was intrigued by the idea but reminded her that he didn't have a hero license, making him hesitant to break the law. he asked, giving his system a grin. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's telepathy conveyed her amusement, noting that the rules had never stopped him before. Izuku's thoughts reflected his mischievous nature as he acknowledged his system, eager to stir up some trouble. He cracked his knuckles in anticipation. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's telepathy expressed her excitement, suggesting that tonight was going to be a good night. Izuku's thoughts registered a hint of annoyance at another reference. After school, once classes were over for the day, Izuku set out to buy some items for his house before following his new nightly routine. He also wanted to treat himself a little. His first stop was a vending machine, where he retrieved an all-might soda can. Leaning against a nearby wall, he relaxed for a moment. Suddenly, he felt a shift in the atmosphere. Izuku's thoughts turned serious as he reached out to 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴, his tone less than friendly. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's telepathy responded, asking what was wrong. Izuku pondered whether he should act on his impulse and confront his classmates who were spying on him. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 urged him to take the high road, but then noticed one of the boys taking pictures and decided to let him have his fun. Izuku felt a surge of joy at her support, crushing the soda can in his hand as he turned to face them. Kaiser's aura activated, sending a wave of fear through his classmates. As he approached them, he noticed 𝐻𝐿 waving at him. She smiled brightly, calling out to him. Izuku was surprised to see her and asked what she was doing there, thinking she would be busy training for the upcoming sports festival. 𝐻𝐿 explained that their teacher had given them an early day to prepare and that she was out shopping for her mom. Izuku felt a wave of relief, jokingly pretending to wipe his brow as he teased her about almost thinking she was stalking him. 𝐻𝐿 pouted, her cheeks slightly reddening, insisting that she had just happened to be nearby. Izuku reassured her that he was only teasing, enjoying the playful banter. 𝐻𝐿 playfully called him a meanie, and Izuku admitted his guilt with a grin. As they continued their conversation, Izuku's classmates watched in disbelief, shocked to see the school's loner getting friendly with someone as popular as 𝐻𝐿. Some of the boys clenched their teeth in a mix of anger and jealousy. 𝐻𝐿 then asked if he wanted to accompany her since he seemed to know the area better. Izuku hesitated for a moment, but 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴's telepathy excitedly suggested that it was like a first date. Izuku quickly dismissed the idea, insisting it was just hanging out. 𝐻𝐿 interrupted his thoughts, assuring him that he didn't have to join her if he was busy. However, Izuku decided to go along, mentioning that he had a few days off from work and wanted to continue their conversation. 𝐻𝐿 beamed at his response, and they set off together. As they walked, Izuku asked to see her shopping list. After she handed it to him, he pointed out the store he usually frequented. Just as he was about to say more, he noticed 𝐻𝐿 had already dashed into the store. She playfully urged him to hurry up, and he chuckled at her enthusiasm, following her inside. Later that day, as they walked back from their outing, Izuku realized he had enjoyed himself more than he expected. The atmosphere between them felt refreshing. 𝐻𝐿 found his earnest nature calming, and every smile he offered made her feel warm inside. Izuku admired her gentleness and honesty, especially when she smiled joyfully at him. 𝐻𝐿 then turned the tables and asked him to name his favorite color. Izuku raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. She insisted he answer, wanting to know. He finally revealed that he liked blue, black, and purple. 𝐻𝐿 was intrigued, noting that she had expected him to choose colors that matched his hair and eyes, but was surprised by his choice of purple. Izuku explained that it reminded him of his adopted father, which made him smile even more. 𝐻𝐿 found his sentimentality sweet, and they continued to share light-hearted banter. As they laughed together, a phone rang, interrupting their moment. 𝐻𝐿 excused herself to take the call from her mom, leaving Izuku to reflect on the enjoyable day they had shared. She mentioned that she needed to head home, to which Izuku nodded in agreement. 𝐻𝐿 expressed her gratitude for the time they spent together, acknowledging that they had gone a bit overboard at the store but still had fun. Izuku reassured her that it was no trouble at all, noting that they wouldn't have the chance to hang out like this again soon since she would be busy training for the sports festival. 𝐻𝐿 asked if she could still text him while she was occupied, and Izuku confirmed that was the reason they exchanged contact information, encouraging her to reach out anytime. She apologized for any inconvenience her calls might cause, but Izuku assured her that he enjoyed their conversations, especially since things could get boring at home. As they talked about the upcoming sports festival, Izuku advised her not to overdo it in her training. 𝐶𝐮𝐻's telepathic voice chimed in, teasing Izuku about his own training habits. He thought to himself that 𝐶𝐮𝐻 should be quiet. 𝐻𝐽 confidently declared her determination to win the festival, pumping her fist in the air. Izuku waved goodbye as she left, promising to see her there. Once home, Izuku put away the items he had bought with 𝐻𝐽 and settled onto his couch with a book. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 teased him about his outing, but he quickly clarified that it was just a hangout, not a date. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 playfully insisted that denying the truth didn't change the facts, prompting Izuku to change the subject by asking about her quotes. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 explained that she found quotes interesting and asked if he had any ideas. Although he claimed he couldn't help with poetry or music, he shared a quote he had in mind. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 eagerly asked to hear it, and he recited it, only for her to criticize its length. In jest, he threw his book at her, which she dodged, and they exchanged playful banter. That night, Izuku 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 perched on a rooftop, waiting for an opportunity to engage in battle. To conceal his identity, he wore a durable black cloak, fingerless gloves, armored leg gear, and a kitsune mask from a festival. He noted that the view was decent but decided to ascend higher, activating his invisibility and enhancing his speed. As he flew above the buildings, the only sound was the swishing of his katana, skull, slicing through the wind. He wondered how the quest system worked, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 explained that regular quests occurred during important events, while emergency quests arose in dire situations. Izuku was intrigued when 𝐶𝐮𝐻 mentioned she could listen to police scanners, revealing that she had been gathering information while he was with 𝐻𝐽. He smiled beneath his mask, appreciating her newfound usefulness. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 suggested using her abilities to check on 𝐻𝐽, but Izuku dismissed the idea, insisting he didn't want to know. Just then, 𝐶𝐮𝐻 pointed out a mugging in progress, prompting Izuku to spring into action. As he chased after the thief, who was escaping with a purse using a jetpack, he heard the woman's cries for help. Izuku quickly caught up to the villain and delivered a swift kick, sending him crashing to the ground and breaking his jetpack. The thief, stunned and gasping, looked around for his assailant, only to hear Izuku mock him for his actions. When the villain brandished a gun, Izuku cryptically replied that his identity was for him to know and for the villain to never find out. Ignoring the threat, he swiftly incapacitated the mugger with a gut punch. Feeling victorious, Izuku retrieved the purse and returned it to the grateful woman. He revealed a glimpse of his gear, introducing himself as 𝐴shiryu and instructing her to relay a message to the police. They would need the #1 hero to stop him. With that, he took to the sky once more, turning invisible again. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 scolded him for revealing his gear, worried it would attract unwanted attention from the authorities and heroes. Izuku expressed his determination, stating that attracting the attention of both heroes and villains would lead to many battles ahead. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 questioned his choice, wondering if this was truly the right path for him. Izuku reassured her, emphasizing that the vessel of the Sovereign of Frost was growing more powerful each day, and he couldn't afford to fall behind. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 reflected on his words, acknowledging the presence of many formidable individuals but still uncertain about his approach. With a sigh, she decided to support him fully, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the sanctuary, within the domain of the Silver Warriors, two rulers were engaged in conversation in a uniquely shaped white office. The first ruler, known as the brightest fragment of brilliant light, was diligently attending to his responsibilities. His sister, Lumina, often admired for her beauty, was gazing into a glass ball, watching her favorite nephew with a warm smile. She eagerly called her brother's attention to the glass ball, prompting him to momentarily set aside his work. Despite his busy schedule, Bright showed interest in Izuku's well-being. Lumina informed him that Izuku had become more determined, and Bright was curious about the source of this newfound motivation. Lumina revealed that Izuku had taken on the role of a vigilante, going by the codename 𝐴shiryu, which caught Bright off guard. He realized that this decision would draw attention from both heroes and villains, a clever but risky move. Lumina expressed her concern for Izuku's safety, vowing to intervene if any harm came to him. Bright reminded her of the rules they had established regarding interference on Earth, trying to calm her down. He reassured her that Izuku was intelligent and capable of handling himself. Lumina reluctantly accepted his words but remained worried. As they observed Izuku in action, Bright pointed out that he was successfully defeating a villain with a powerful kick. Lumina cheered him on, despite her earlier concerns. Izuku reflected on his progress after defeating several villains, feeling that his current pace was insufficient. He reviewed his stats, noting his level and skills, determined to improve further. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, his partner, remarked on the knight still being young, and Izuku acknowledged her coolness. Meanwhile, on the streets, police sirens blared as squad cars pursued a hooded figure. Officers communicated about their target, the vigilante 𝐬𝐻𝐻, and expressed their frustration at the chase. The police chief ordered their apprehension, emphasizing the importance of not letting him escape again. Despite doubts about their chances, they were reassured that a pro-hero was assisting them this time. 𝐬𝐻𝐻, aware of the pursuit, acknowledged the relentless nature of the police. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pointed out that his actions had drawn trouble from both villains and law enforcement. Izuku explained that attracting attention was part of his strategy to face stronger opponents, even if it meant walking into traps. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 admitted that his plan was yielding some results, though she remained skeptical. As they approached a dead end, Izuku's impatience grew, eager to see which hero had been sent to confront him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 hoped that the hero would be strong enough to provide a real challenge, both intrigued and concerned for the outcome. He began running up the building, using the strength in his legs to counteract gravity. The squad cars had stopped, having completed their part, leaving the rest to their backup. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 soon reached the roof, waiting for the hero to reveal themselves. He looked towards the door and wondered if the hero would just stand there all night. Kaiser's aura had been activated. A female voice, still shrouded in darkness, remarked that he had been hard to find. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 remained silent, prompting her to tease him about being a quiet one, suggesting that vigilantes usually craved attention. He asked her what she wanted, referring to her as a little rabbit, not falling for her taunts. Suddenly, a white blur swooped down towards him. He raised his arm to absorb the impact of the attack, which cracked the floor beneath him. An emergency quest notification appeared, instructing him to defeat the number 8 heroine, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, with rewards of experience and agility boots. 𝐀𝐮𝐴's telepathy expressed surprise that 𝐀𝐻𝐻 was the one sent after him. 𝐬𝐻𝐻, thinking of his previous battles, felt confident he had grown stronger since his fight with Ryukyu and would win this encounter. He smiled beneath his mask and challenged 𝐀𝐻𝐻, expressing disappointment in her attack. With a swift motion, he backhanded her leg, sending her skidding a few meters away. 𝐀𝐻𝐻, pleased that he had heard of her, declared that he would soon know the person who would defeat him. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 told her she could try, preparing for combat. 𝐀𝐻𝐻 warned him to consider surrendering, suggesting it would be better for him to stop his vigilantism while he still could. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 explained that he fought to challenge stronger opponents, dismissing the villains he had faced as weaklings. 𝐀𝐻𝐻 was frustrated by his arrogance and attempted to counter with a kick that cracked the ground. She grinned at him, intrigued by the power behind his attacks. 𝐬𝐻𝐻, demanding she fight him seriously, warned her not to disappoint him. 𝐀𝐻𝐻 decided to take the fight seriously, launching a series of powerful kicks. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 dodged some but took the brunt of her whirlwind attacks, thankful for the protective scales he had consumed earlier. However, one of 𝐀𝐻𝐻's punches landed squarely on his jaw, knocking him out momentarily. She caught her breath, feeling victorious for a moment, and called the police chief to report her success. But just as she relayed her victory, 𝐬𝐻𝐻 grabbed her arm, crushing her phone in the process. He warned her not to celebrate too soon, as it was now his turn to attack. With a burst of speed, he kicked her aside, causing her to fall off the roof. He caught her legs, slamming her down onto the ground. 𝐀𝐻𝐻 coughed and struggled to regain her bearings, but 𝐬𝐻𝐻 delivered a swift chop to her ribs, causing her pain. He offered her one last chance to strike him with her strongest attack, threatening her if she didn't comply. 𝐀𝐻𝐻, ignoring her injury, leaped into the air and executed her special move, Lunar Arc, aiming to land a decisive blow. To her shock, 𝐬𝐻𝐻 blocked her kick effortlessly with the flat side of his katana. He declared that their fun was over and struck her with the butt of his weapon, sending her crashing to the ground. As she knelt, coughing and spitting blood, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 wondered where her sniper was, realizing she needed to regain control of the situation. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗔, holstering his katana, taunted her about her tranquilizer plan, revealing that he had knocked out the sniper and all the officers below before their fight began. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝗫 was taken aback, questioning why he was doing all this, as he had only fought villains since his appearance 2 weeks prior. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 stated that the information was for him to know but offered to compromise, acknowledging that she had given him a good fight. He became serious, staring at the moon, and spoke of 2 types of people that existed beyond what their eyes could see. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝗫, intrigued, asked who those people might be. She became interested in what he had to say. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 explained that there were people without quirks who had carved their names in history as the strongest, while others had simply never been recorded. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝗫, bewildered by the idea, questioned how it was even possible for those without quirks to become the strongest. Although she knew she shouldn't believe him, a part of her mind urged her to hear more. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 continued, stating that quirks weren't the blessing society believed them to be, but rather a horrible curse. He then declared he had said enough and was done talking to her. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝗫 attempted to protest, but before she could finish, she was met with a swift chop to the neck, rendering her unconscious. 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 thanked her for the fight before jumping off the roof. Invisibility was activated, and Kickflight's abilities were engaged. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's telepathy reached out, asking Izuku why he had shared those words with 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝗫. Izuku explained that he wanted to give her a glimpse of the truth, adding that she had earned his respect. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 teased him, suggesting he had fun during the encounter, to which Izuku quietly agreed, though he was aware she could hear him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 then reminded him that he had rewards waiting for him, announcing that he had leveled up multiple times and obtained agility boots. The next morning, 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 woke Izuku, urging him to get up and make breakfast. He yawned and complied, stretching as he checked the time. He inquired about the sports festival, realizing it was the next day. After thanking her, he reviewed his new stats, noting his level and attributes. He mused that despite all the fighting, he had only managed to level up 5 times. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 encouraged him to look on the bright side, reminding him of the extra points he had to spend. Izuku acknowledged her point but asked for her advice on where to allocate them. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 playfully insisted he should figure it out himself, giggling like a child. Izuku muttered under his breath, calling her a child, which she overheard and playfully scolded him for. In the living room, 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 floated next to the counter, browsing videos of 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 online. A video of him saving a child from a hostage situation brought a smile to her face. Izuku, however, found the videos and comments trivial, preferring to focus on more important matters. He asked 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 if there was anything interesting about 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 that she wanted to share. In a panic, she insisted it wasn't what it looked like. Izuku, knowing he was the one paying the bills, teased her about searching for 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 videos on his phone. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 admitted she had watched some videos about him, and Izuku questioned why she found them interesting. She argued that fighting gangs and saving civilians was far from trivial. Izuku, however, remained indifferent, stating that unless it could attract more heroes to challenge him, he didn't care. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 informed him that he was an internet sensation and that people he had helped had expressed their gratitude. When Izuku checked his phone, he was surprised to find messages of thanks. Speechless, he struggled to respond, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 reassured him that he didn't need to say anything, playfully bumping him. He eventually acknowledged her words and took a seat on the couch. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝗫 suggested they check the news, to which Izuku responded with skepticism, teasing her about her usual disdain for anything but cartoons. She urged him to turn on the TV, and he complied, surprised to see a dog in a suit being questioned by the media. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻𝗫 explained that it was the dog's quirk and urged him to focus on the volume. Izuku, still bemused by the randomness of quirks, turned up the volume as the news anchor questioned the police chief about the mysterious vigilante 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫. The chief stated that despite their failed attempts to capture him, 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫's actions were still criminal. He acknowledged that while some claimed 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 had saved people from villain attacks, he was still breaking the law and could cause more harm than good. The chief insisted that everything 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝗫 had done should have been left to licensed heroes. As the questioning continued, The chief revealed that they had no clues about 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐻's identity, noting that he had shown signs of turning invisible. He mentioned an incident involving a civilian who had been held hostage, explaining that the civilian had a quirk that allowed them to see through objects. However, the civilian had been wearing special glasses to block their quirk, which had been removed during the scuffle. When 𝐬𝐻 arrived, the civilian had looked at his mask and claimed there was nothing to see. The chief concluded that this made 𝐬𝐻 even more dangerous. Izuku, having heard enough, turned off the TV, expressing his frustration with the police's nonsense. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 questioned why he had turned it off, and he explained that he was tired of the distractions, especially since he was focused on his plan to fight stronger opponents. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 understood his annoyance and agreed to stay quiet while reading some books as she floated to his backpack. Izuku prepared to head to school, eager to get the day over with. Taking a last sip of his coffee, Izuku left the house and made his way to school. Like the week before, he walked to his first PRD, ignoring the people around him. As he approached his usual hallway, he noticed some girls staring at him. When he looked back, they quickly turned their heads away, whispering and giggling. Confused, he brushed it off and opened the door, sensing their attention but deciding it wasn't worth his trouble. Upon entering the classroom, his confusion deepened as he saw all the boys staring at him with hostile expressions. Determined to understand what was happening, he activated his senses. He felt a mix of rage and jealousy directed at him, emotions he couldn't comprehend. 𝐀𝐮𝐿's telepathy reached out to him, questioning what he had done to provoke such animosity. Izuku had no idea, and 𝐀𝐮𝐿 warned him to be cautious of the boys. He thought that if they tried anything, he would respond in kind. With a hint of irritation, he asked what they were looking at, his tone far from friendly. Just as he finished speaking, a book was thrown at him. He caught it effortlessly, glaring at the culprit. Izuku then asked 𝐀𝐮𝐿 if she could manipulate small technologies. She confirmed her ability to control minor appliances and agreed to help him drop that kid's grades to failing. Grateful, he prepared to confront the situation. He slammed the book down on the teacher's desk, drawing even more attention. He demanded to know why they were throwing things at him, and the boy who had thrown the book sneered, reminding him of his nickname. Izuku activated his aura, using just enough power to intimidate them without causing harm. The entire class shivered under his gaze, and he dared them to try again before taking his seat. Suddenly, the door swung open, revealing a furious 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿. Izuku's thoughts raced as he recognized the trouble that was about to unfold. 𝐀𝐮𝐿 wondered what was bothering 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿, and Izuku recalled that rumors had spread about him dating 𝐁𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, which had sparked jealousy among his classmates, including 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿, the explosive teen, was furious at Izuku, whom he had despised for years. Their history was filled with animosity, and 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿's anger intensified upon hearing about Izuku's supposed relationship. He couldn't understand why Izuku, the quirkless boy, would be with someone from you. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿's thoughts were filled with frustration and jealousy, and he was determined to confront Izuku about it. As 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 entered the classroom, he locked eyes with Izuku, who simply rolled his eyes in response, further infuriating 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿. The blonde slammed his hand on Izuku's desk, demanding to talk about the rumor he had heard regarding a blue-haired girl. Izuku, not wanting to engage, claimed ignorance. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿, growing more aggressive, exploded a portion of the desk in an attempt to intimidate him. Despite the chaos, Izuku stood his ground, asserting that he wouldn't share anything with 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿. The class watched in silence, surprised by Izuku's newfound confidence. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 threatened him, sparks flickering from his palms, but Izuku warned him not to call him by that nickname again, his patience wearing thin. In a sudden turn, 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 unleashed his quirk, but to everyone's shock, Izuku had seized his arm in a firm grip. 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 was taken aback, wondering how he had missed his chance to strike. Izuku's glowing eyes conveyed his determination as he warned 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 to prepare himself. Their teacher intervened, demanding to know what they were doing. He reminded 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 of the rules regarding the use of quirks on school grounds and admonished Izuku for engaging in a fight. Izuku mentally protested, feeling that 𝐻𝐵𝐻𝐿 had started it. As tension filled the air, 𝐀𝐮𝐿 urged him to hold back, and he reluctantly agreed. He mumbled, turning his head away. The teacher sighed, asking if anyone could explain what had happened. A student was about to speak when Izuku interrupted, stating that it was nothing worth his time. He took another seat, glaring at 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿. The teacher instructed everyone to take their seats and get their books out. The class complied, but one student remained preoccupied with the earlier incident. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 thought to himself about how Izuku had managed to do something unexpected, glancing at his own hand. He looked to his left and saw Izuku staring out the window, seemingly unfazed. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 wondered who Izuku really was. The bell rang, signaling the start of first period. While everything seemed to return to normal, the class was still on edge from the morning's events. 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿's anger towards Izuku intensified due to what had happened with his arm, while Izuku felt increasingly irritated by the intense glares 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 directed at him. If 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 hadn't seen 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 as a threat and wanted to prevent Izuku from getting into trouble for retaliating, she would have given him an emergency quest. Time passed, and Izuku found himself frustrated with the slow-moving line. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him that he was the one who forgot to buy the tickets and needed to deal with it. Izuku insisted that he hadn't forgotten anything. He had tried to purchase them online but was hindered by the site asking for his last name. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 continued to tease him, and he rolled his eyes at her antics. She then asked about his ongoing identity crisis, and he expressed his frustration about needing a last name. He recalled a previous visit to the town hall that hadn't gone well, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 playfully reminded him of his failure. Izuku shared that Mr. Yuki had offered to help him change his last name by acting as his legal guardian. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 was surprised, not thinking he would want anyone to look after him as an adult. Izuku reflected on how Mr. Yuki had been supportive, and he chuckled at the memory of Mr. Yuki playfully chastising him for being stubborn. He felt grateful for the help, knowing that soon he would officially be Izuku Kajino. After a few minutes of conversation, they realized they were at the front of the line. As he walked away, he discreetly stored the ticket in his inventory for safekeeping. His day brightened when a familiar blue-haired girl approached him from behind, playfully trying to scare him. Izuku responded with confidence, insisting it would take more than that to startle him. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, the girl, expressed her disappointment at not succeeding in her attempt. He revealed that he had come to get tickets for the festival, to which she suggested he could have bought them online to avoid the hassle. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 chimed in, teasing him again, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 greeted her warmly, asking how she was doing. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 claimed she was fine, just keeping Izuku in line. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 inquired about what trouble Izuku had caused this time, but he quickly redirected the conversation. He explained that he couldn't buy the ticket online because he needed a last name. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 apologized for forgetting about his situation and expressed relief that his boss had helped him with the issue. Izuku reassured her that he wouldn't miss her first sports festival for anything. She thanked him, appreciating his support. As they chatted, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 mentioned she had just finished training with her classmates and was heading home when she spotted him. Izuku asked if the training had been tough, and she confirmed it had been challenging, as she didn't want to slack off while others were working hard. He noted her determination to win and look impressive while doing it. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 spoke highly of her friends, saying they were strong and kind, and offered to introduce them to Izuku. However, he hesitated, doubting they would like him. She encouraged him not to be negative, insisting he would get along well with them, even with 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫. Just then, 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 popped his head out from behind a wall, startling both Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨, who screamed and clung to each other in surprise. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 laughed, finding their reactions amusing, while Tamaki, his friend, commented that he had warned 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 not to scare them. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 playfully asked when they would stop holding onto each other so tightly and jokingly inquired if Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 were together. He teased, giving Izuku a thumbs up. It then dawned on Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 that they were still wrapped around each other. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 apologized, letting go of him as her face turned crimson. Izuku waved it off, looking away in embarrassment. Both Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 thought about how awkward it was to still be hugging, feeling embarrassed. 𝐀𝐮 found the situation amusing and wondered who would confess their feelings first. After a few moments, Izuku decided to clarify things. He stated that they were not together and that he was single, hoping to prevent any further misunderstandings. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 chimed in, questioning who the guy was that 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐫 had mentioned the previous week. Izuku was taken aback, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 scolded 𝐴𝐵 for making jokes. Tamaki agreed, saying the joke was over. 𝐴𝐵 introduced himself, apologizing for the earlier confusion. Izuku sighed and introduced himself in return. 𝐴𝐵 complimented Izuku's name and extended his hand for a handshake, which Izuku accepted, albeit with a questioning look. Izuku learned that these were the friends 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had been talking about. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 proudly mentioned their impressive quirks and skills, claiming that 𝐴𝐵 was nearly unbeatable in combat. Izuku acknowledged 𝐴𝐵's strength, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 teased him about receiving special training from one of the big three. 𝐴𝐵, feeling bashful, downplayed his training, saying it was just combat practice. He then asked Izuku about his quirk. Izuku admitted that he was quirkless, expecting 𝐴𝐵 to look down on him. Instead, 𝐴𝐵 was fascinated, expressing admiration for Izuku's fight against Ryukyu. He was particularly excited about the part where Izuku used a red spear, claiming it had him on the edge of his seat. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 added that Tamaki had felt the same way, pointing to the shy boy who looked like he wanted to disappear. 𝐴𝐵 was thrilled every time he heard about Izuku's strength and wanted to know how he managed it. Izuku, however, decided not to explain. Instead, he activated his senses and was surprised to find that 𝐴𝐵 radiated an overwhelming amount of happiness and positivity, which was almost blinding. He winced, clutching his eyes in discomfort. 𝐴𝐵 noticed and asked if he was okay, to which Izuku replied that he just needed to rest his eyes. 𝐴𝐵 repeated his question about Izuku's strength, but Izuku remained evasive. 𝐴𝐵 then inquired about the floating object next to Izuku, to which Izuku introduced 𝐒𝐮𝐱, a family heirloom, and mentioned that he thought he had told her to stay in his backpack. 𝐒𝐮𝐱, however, refused to apologize for her actions. 𝐴𝐵 was curious about 𝐒𝐮𝐱's abilities, and Izuku jokingly claimed she did nothing, just to tease her. 𝐴𝐵 then asked if Izuku liked 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, prompting a frown from 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 as she tried to hide her blush. Izuku insisted that they were just friends and urged 𝐴𝐵 not to overthink it. 𝐴𝐵 pressed on, curious about how Izuku had become so strong, but Izuku remained tight-lipped. 𝐴𝐵 respected his decision and gave him a fist bump, which Izuku returned with a sigh. As the conversation came to a close, 𝐴𝐵 and Tamaki prepared to leave, waving goodbye. Izuku remarked on 𝐴𝐵's cheerful nature, while 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 noted that Tamaki was quite the opposite. Izuku decided it was time for him to go as well and bid them farewell. Back at home, Izuku played some Mozart on the piano to relax, reflecting on his unusual encounter with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's friends. 𝐒𝐮𝐱 asked if he was all right, noting his silence. Izuku expressed his surprise at how quirky and cool 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's friends were, and 𝐒𝐮𝐱 agreed that it was nice for her to have such people in her life. Izuku found it strange how rare it was to meet someone who radiated such positivity and kindness. 𝐒𝐮𝐱 reminded him that there was also Tamaki, who, despite being shy, was a mellow guy. Izuku considered the idea of befriending them, feeling a smile spread across his face as he continued to play music. Personality: a strong and intelligent young princess with the strength to back it up, born from the union of the former dragon king Antares and a mortal priestess. This half-breed shows everyone, whether it be her precious people or her enemies, that she is the true embodiment of destruction. Her terrifying power is not all she wields. She can also be a very pleasant companion, always wearing a gorgeous smile as she goes about her work. She loves and cares for her little sister deeply, doing everything she can to spend time with her while fulfilling her duties. Besides wanting to gain strength to fight off anything that threatens the safety of her family, she doesn't have many dreams aside from wanting to find a strong partner who can challenge her in both battle and life. Izuku's perspective shifted as 𝐒𝐮𝐱 called out to him from the doorway, urging him to hurry up. He grumbled about the time, feeling frustrated that he couldn't even take a shower in his own home anymore. 𝐒𝐮𝐱 pointed out that it was his fault for needing to clean up after his intense training, which had left him with an unpleasant odor. He defended himself, insisting that the training was worth it, and continued to get dressed. 𝐒𝐮𝐱 playfully growled at him, insisting he needed a wake-up call. He found her cute, but she quickly reminded him that she was not a child and demanded he treat her as a teenager. Izuku looked at himself in the mirror, dressed in black jeans, blue shoes, and a white skull t-shirt under his black and blue jacket, which bore the Ashbourne family symbol. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 teased him about wanting to impress 𝐻𝐮𝐻𝗫, and he grumbled in response. She reassured him that he looked amazing, and he accepted the compliment. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 reminded him not to forget his wallet, as there would be snacks available, and he raised an eyebrow at her insistence. She playfully imagined 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 in a tight sports uniform, which caused Izuku to panic and shout for her to stop. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 laughed at his embarrassment, teasing him about his feelings for 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫. As they prepared to leave, Izuku quickly shoved his belongings into his backpack, trying to ignore the muffled protests coming from inside. Meanwhile, at UA, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 and her classmates were waiting to be called out to the spotlight where pro heroes, their sidekicks, businessmen, and sponsors gathered to see the future heroes compete. Mirio expressed his excitement, while Tamaki seemed less enthusiastic, fearing they might disappoint the professionals. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 sat quietly at the end of the room, appearing to mentally prepare for the competition, but her thoughts were occupied with the black and blue-haired teen she considered a friend. She wondered if he had arrived yet, contemplating whether to call him. Yu, noticing 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫's distress, nudged her to get her attention. When asked if she was okay, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 feigned nonchalance, but Yu pressed on, sensing her tension. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 admitted to feeling nervous about the festival, and Yu teased her about her feelings for Izuku. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 insisted he wasn't hers, but Yu's playful comments only made her more flustered. As she reflected on her past and her growth since then, she couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and anticipation about how she would perform, especially considering Izuku's incredible skills. Yu continued to check in on her, concerned for her well-being. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 expressed her concern, feeling a bit vulnerable. She admitted that she never thought she would discuss her feelings with someone, apologizing for bringing down the mood as she wiped a tear from her eye. Yu reassured her that it was okay and that she didn't need to apologize for sharing her thoughts. Yu encouraged 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫, saying that whatever she did he was going to love it. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫's smile returned as she asked if Yu really believed that. Yu affirmed that he wouldn't have come to see her if he didn't think she was amazing. Grateful, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝗫 thanked Yu and gave her a hug, to which Yu responded that she was there to support her. Meanwhile, Izuku had an hour to spare and looked around at the various food stands. The delicious smells wafted toward him. 𝐶𝐮𝐻, communicating through telepathy, expressed her excitement about the tasty treats. Izuku noted that the food looked well prepared, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 urged him to check out a takoyaki stand, suggesting they go get some. Izuku wondered why 𝐶𝐮𝐻 was so excited since she couldn't eat, but she playfully reminded him that he could describe the taste to her. He acknowledged that while he could do that, it wouldn't be the same. Izuku pondered how they might create a physical body for 𝐶𝐮𝐻. She responded that she wasn't sure if that was possible but was just happy to be alive. He asked her to explain how she worked, as it was still a bit confusing. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 explained that she was created by Lord Ashbourne from the Grand System and integrated into his soul, where she learned about his character and purpose. Izuku realized she had been inside his mind from the beginning, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 reassured him that she hadn't seen any of his memories due to his strong mental barriers. She shared that Lord Ashbourne had told her about his life, so she hadn't pried further. After her integration, 𝐶𝐮𝐻 learned about the kind of person Izuku was and felt fortunate to serve him. Izuku smiled at her compliment, and 𝐶𝐮𝐻 continued, explaining that after he obtained the treasured star from a quest, she gained the ability to multitask. Izuku understood that she could operate independently while still connected to him. He asked if she wanted to do things outside of his soul, but 𝐶𝐮𝐻 insisted she was content floating around. However, Izuku was determined to get her a body, despite her protests. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 sighed, acknowledging that she had a troublesome 𝐒𝐻𝗫. As their conversation continued, 𝐶𝐮𝐻 mentioned feeling tired and decided to take a nap. Izuku apologized for keeping her too long and encouraged her to enjoy some takoyaki and taiyaki while he went to get food. 𝐶𝐮𝐻 wished him well as she settled down to rest, her form dimming as she floated back into his subconscious. Izuku, after his lengthy discussion with 𝐶𝐮𝐻, approached the nearest food stand. He encountered a tall man with green eyes and white hair, who was initially engrossed in a book. The man apologized for the wait as he put his book down and returned wearing an apron and hairnet. He asked what Izuku would like, and Izuku pointed to the takoyaki, requesting two. The man informed him that he would be making fresh ones and asked if Izuku could wait a bit. Izuku agreed, noting that they would taste better hot. The man remarked that it was Izuku's first time at the sports festival, and Izuku confirmed that he was only there to cheer on a friend. The man teasingly guessed that it was a girl, prompting Izuku to question how he knew. The man attributed it to adult intuition, suggesting that a man's motivation often stemmed from a woman. Izuku found the comment a bit stereotypical but sensed nothing dangerous about the man. As the takoyaki finished cooking, the man presented it to Izuku with a grin. He handed over the steaming paper plate, and Izuku expressed his gratitude. The vendor waved it off, insisting it was on the house. Izuku tilted his head in confusion, asking if he was sure. The vendor confirmed, saying it was a thank you for being the first customer of the day. Izuku thanked him again, apologizing for not knowing his name. The vendor introduced himself as Kensaki and playfully urged Izuku to check out the other food stands, mentioning that he was holding up the line. Izuku agreed and waved goodbye, feeling grateful. Once alone, Kensaki closed his eyes and began humming a tune, a smile on his face. If one looked closely at his right hand, they would see a sword-shaped ring. Bright, a figure watching from the sidelines, remarked that even a successor to the Shadow Monarch should not push themselves too hard, or they risk being cut down by the enemy. He opened his eyes, revealing a pair of pure golden orbs, and hoped that Izuku could impress the Paladin of Death as his elder brother had. At the opening ceremony, Mike introduced the students, announcing the arrival of the stars of the day. Fireworks erupted in the sky as students from A to D emerged from the gate, determination evident on their faces. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's attention was divided between the challenge ahead and searching for her shadow, but she realized it was impossible to spot him at that moment. She sighed, acknowledging that while she couldn't see him, she knew he was watching. With a smile, she vowed to show Izuku how much she had improved since their last encounter. Izuku felt a strange sensation in his chest, wondering why it reminded him of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. He scolded himself for being so affected. As the festival progressed, he found himself enjoying the rounds more than he expected, cheering for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 in his mind. He understood that the first two rounds were merely tests for the first years, and he anticipated the final round to reveal their true capabilities. As the semifinals approached, Izuku reflected on how well 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had performed, feeling foolish for not noticing her growth. He acknowledged that winning the tournament was within her reach, but her next opponent, Tamaki, would be a challenge. He sighed, recalling Mirio's flawless victories. Regardless of the outcome, he thought, she would always be a winner in his eyes. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, having awakened from her nap, engaged in telepathic conversation with Izuku. She teased him about love, and he responded with playful frustration. They discussed the tournament, and 𝐀𝐮𝐴 expressed interest in how 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was doing. Izuku insisted that 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was not his, feeling overwhelmed by her teasing. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stepped out of the corridor to face her opponent, Tamaki, who appeared anxious. She approached him with her friendly demeanor, concerned about his stress. Tamaki expressed his longing to forfeit due to the pressure, but 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 insisted that if he did, she would forfeit as well. She explained that she wanted to win, but not in a way that would undermine their efforts. She wanted to impress someone special, and she was sure he would want to see Tamaki's best as well. Tamaki, realizing the importance of the match to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, agreed to give it his best shot. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 encouraged him, stating she wouldn't have it any other way. As they prepared for the match, the proctor asked if they were ready, and both confirmed their readiness. The proctor then announced the start of the match. He yelled as two students ran toward each other, the crowd cheering in excitement. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 expressed his apologies for the delay in the chapter, explaining that he had been celebrating his birthday with family. As a gesture of goodwill, he decided to share more about the history of this crossover and provide Bright's biography. In the beginning, before time itself began, there was nothing. Then God, the absolute being, emerged from another dimension. With incredible power, he split the forces of light into 8, giving rise to the rulers. From the darkness, he created the 8 monarchs. Their purpose at Bardich was clear. The monarchs sought to destroy the universe, while the rulers aimed to maintain it. Thus, the First War began. It was a catastrophic conflict, with monsters of all kinds battling against the Silver Warriors. The casualties were staggering, ranging from millions to trillions. The cries, rage, and tears of the fallen soldiers echoed through time, and the term Great War hardly did justice to the devastation. It was an eternal war. Eons later, the leader of the rulers, known as the brightest fragment of brilliant light, approached his father and creator. He pleaded for assistance in ending the hell they had endured for so long. However, the absolute being chose not to intervene. When asked why, he simply stated that it would be too boring if he did. Unable to comprehend his lord's reasoning, Bright returned to the battlefield. The war dragged on for another century, and despite his intelligence, Bright could not grasp the meaning behind his creator's choice. He questioned why they fought in this unending nightmare, why comrades fell, and why he had been created. Unable to find answers, he chose to forget the conversation, finding solace in the presence of an angel. He became the first ruler to fall in love, cherishing the moments spent with her during ceasefires. However, good things rarely last. The war returned with increasing ferocity, and it was only when his beloved died in his arms that he understood the true purpose of his creation. He realized that they had merely been a source of entertainment for the absolute being. In anguish, he vowed to end the war and confront his creator. Bright shared his revelation with his siblings, but at first, they dismissed him, labeling it blasphemy. Yet, as they reflected on his words, the truth began to resonate. The anger and anguish they felt would forever remain etched in their memories. One by one, they betrayed their creator and joined Bright in his rebellion. The only one who remained loyal was Ashbourne, the eldest and strongest, who was blind to the truth and chose to protect his father from the perceived traitors. Unwilling to fight his siblings, Bright faced Ashbourne. Their battle was long and grueling, with both brothers and their armies refusing to yield. The sky and earth shifted with each clash. Though Ashbourne had the upper hand, Bright discovered a power within himself that eclipsed his elder brother's strength. With tears streaming down his face, he defeated Ashbourne. He expressed his sorrow, hoping that when Ashbourne reached true eternal rest, he would forgive him, even if he could not forgive himself. Bright's biography revealed his identity. Bright, the brightest fragment of brilliant light, the ultimate swordsman and leader of the rulers. His hair was radiant white, turning silver when serious. His age was unknown, as he was immortal and belonged to the ruler race. He cherished humans, his siblings, and his beloved, and he wielded a katana as his weapon of choice. His eyes were pure gold, and he had a fondness for Japanese cuisine, although he did not need to eat. Bright's personality was shaped by his experiences. Once a spear wielder fighting for what he believed in, he transformed into a swordsman who rebelled against his creator. He was kind to his family and wished to spare others from the pain he had endured. While striving for peace, he was always prepared for war. Calm and kind, he could become fearsome if provoked. His current goal was to protect the new generation of sovereigns. The continuation of the story would follow after the sports festival. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 encouraged readers to share their thoughts and announced that he would be transitioning to a new account for better writing. He expressed gratitude for their patience and support as he embarked on this new journey. 𝐻𝐻𝐷𝐸 was a spear of remarkable craftsmanship, forged from the remnants of the fangs of the legendary Nordic beast Fenrir. It was named after Fenrir's son, Hati, the wolf destined to chase the sun. This spear boasted a +50 attack power and possessed the unique abilities to penetrate and paralyze. The onlookers were captivated by the spear's sudden appearance in his hand, a spectacle that left them in awe. Ryukyu expressed her admiration for the unexpected surprises he had revealed. Izuku acknowledged her compliment but quickly shifted the focus, asking if she was ready for the challenge ahead. With the activation of Sprint, he surged forward, charging at Ryukyu. In her dragon form, she had no choice but to defend herself, raising her fist to block his attack. The impact of their clash sent small bursts of wind swirling around them, a testament to the strength of their confrontation.